The apocalyptic aftermath was pure nightmare fuel. Broken weapons jutted from corpses, while a literal tide of monsters tore across the scorched earth like death itself given legs. Behind the last massive defense wall, thousands of refugees huddled in total misery. Among them sat a young, non-awakened civilian named Kyoya Hidaka. He turned to thank the older guy who'd kept him alive, but before the kid could finish, that older companion smacked him upside the head and barked at him to call him Big Brother, or at least use his actual name. That cheerful, laid-back troublemaker was Tenma Tsukishiro, bottom-tier F-rank hunter with zero aura to flex. Kyoya rubbed the fresh bruise, pouting that it couldn't possibly be legal for a licensed hunter to beat up civilians. Tenma just laughed it off and trash-talked his own empty resume. 20 straight years as an F-rank fraud who'd never unlocked a single skill. Completely useless. He pointed toward the staging platform and said a real hunter looked like the golden boy currently standing at the podium, SSS rank hunter Kakeru Amamiya. 20 years earlier, gates had ripped open across the globe and spilled bloodthirsty monsters that reduced civilization to ash. The only reason humanity survived was the system, which handed game-like powers to select people who became hunters. An elite squad of 11 absolute units, the last 11 held the front lines against extinction. Then the demon race arrived, flexing power that made even the strongest human champions look like children. Now, after years of slaughter, humanity had been shoved back to its final wall. 6 of the last 11 were already buried. Only 5 legends remained. Amamiya faced the exhausted crowd with a grim expression and confirmed the obvious. 6 of their strongest were dead, and the demonic army was closing in for the wipeout. But just when hope seemed gone, he revealed one last cheat code. Beside him, an elite female mage raised a mysterious golden hourglass that erupted in blinding light. The artifact tore open a gigantic golden portal, humming with raw temporal energy. Amamiya named it the Regression Point, a one-time gate that could send a single person 20 years into the past, before the demon invasion ever began. Whoever stepped through had to stop the invasion at its roots. The crowd exploded. 20 years ago was exactly when the demons had been preparing their assault. Voices rose in unison, chanting Amamiya's name. Only an SSS rank powerhouse had any shot at pulling off a miracle. Down among the refugees, a bandaged guy screamed for Amamiya to go back and fix their broken world. Kyoya sighed nearby, muttering how nice a redo must feel, then joked that Amamiya had probably been just a little kid back then. A non-awakened civilian like himself or a weak F-rank would never be chosen, but if he somehow got the chance, he'd only want to see his parents' faces one last time. Tenma rested a quiet hand on the kid's head without a word. Up on the platform, the female mage gripped Amamiya's shoulder and told him to accept the duty. He was the only one strong enough to carry humanity's fate. Amamiya nodded, swearing he would rewrite history no matter the cost. He never took the first step. A sudden wave of deadly dark magic rained from the sky. Black spires slammed into the staging platform with apocalyptic force. The mage threw up a bright pink barrier, screaming in terror, but the attack shattered it like cheap glass. A massive dark projectile punched through the smoke. The shockwave roared toward the refugees. Tenma spotted Kyoya sitting dead in the blast path. He charged without hesitation, tackling the kid clear and shoving him into safety, leaving himself fully exposed. Kyoya watched in horrified slow motion as Tenma looked back with a gentle smile right before the dark energy detonated. When the dust settled, Kyoya screamed for his uncle and ran to the smoking crater. Tenma lay in a pool of his own blood, broken and barely breathing. With his final breath, he coughed up blood and weakly reminded the kid one last time to call him Big Brother, not Uncle. Behind the dying body, the shattered regression point gate violently reacted. A glowing blue system window warned it was correcting a temporal distortion. A dark red alert followed. Unique item regression point had activated on target F-rank hunter Tenma Tsukishiro. A pillar of golden light yanked his dying body into the atmosphere. On the rec stage, the female mage stared at the empty portal in shock, asking who the hell just fell in. Amamiya dropped to his knees, face pale with despair. Their ultimate salvation had been hijacked by a random nobody. Red system windows flooded the interface, reporting severe causal distortion and a critical defect in the subject. The causal adjustment protocol Deus Ex Machina would forcibly execute in 30 minutes to resolve the logic errors caused by a weakling regressing. Tenma opened his eyes on soft grass in a dense, peaceful forest. He stared at his trembling hands, wondering if he'd actually entered the gate. Even if a trash F-rank like him made it back, there was no way he could stop the demon race. A strange glowing red window floated in front of his face. A second later, a blue system screen announced regression successful and prompted him to check status. 24 years old. Level 2. F rank, 0 traits, 0 skills. He caught his reflection and realized he really had traveled 2 decades into the past. A sharp monster screech snapped him back. He sprinted into the bushes, hid behind a thick trunk, and peeked out at a group of green goblins marching with axes. He'd landed inside an active monster gate. He started sweating bullets, mentally roasting himself for still being terrified of weak goblins after going back in time. Golden rules of gate survival: find the exit or clear the system quest. With 0 skills, both were impossible. A red timer appeared, counting down 24 minutes and 33 seconds. He had no idea what the deadline meant. A cold metallic glint flashed through the foliage. A dark blur whipped through the air and cleanly sliced 2 goblins in half. A severed head landed right in front of Tenma's hiding spot. He peeked out with a bright smile, assuming a high-level hunter was clearing the area and hoping for a rescue. Relief died the instant he saw a hooded green creature covered in blue aura standing on a pile of corpses, twin blood-stained blades in hand. Tenma clapped both hands over his mouth. Dual-wielding Ku Chulain, infamous named boss that slaughtered entire hunter squads. Why the hell was a high-tier named monster lurking in a low-level gate? A terrified young hunter in green armor came sprinting through the trees, screaming for help because something was massacring both monsters and humans. He ran straight into the trap. The hooded boss vanished and dropped right in front of him, sadistic grin glowing. Blades rose for the execution strike. Tenma threw himself out from behind the tree, tackling the rookie clear. They tumbled across the dirt as the blades smashed into the ground and tore up the earth. Tenma landed on top of the kid, grabbed his arm, and yelled at him to run. They sprinted into the dense woods. Behind them, the furious boss ripped its weapons free and roared. Deep in the forest, the 2 hunters finally slowed, gasping against a tree. The young hunter begged for a breather and asked what kind of crazy monster that goblin was. Tenma dropped to his knees, cursing his pathetic stamina. Even after regressing, an F-rank body was still trash. Then his eyes locked onto the glowing crest on the kid's chest armor. Night Crow Guild. The young hunter confirmed his guild was supposed to have secured this gate, then asked who Tenma was and what he was doing there. Tenma's heart dropped. He had landed inside the infamous Night Crow Guild incident, the legendary tragedy where an irregular named boss wiped an entire major guild in a B-class gate, then slaughtered the elite rescue team that followed. Global shockwave. They were sitting inside a literal death trap. Tenma panicked and screamed that they needed to escape right now. He asked if the kid had a spare weapon so they could fight their way out. The young hunter agreed and pulled up his system window to retrieve a sword. Before his fingers touched the screen, a flash of red sliced through the air. The kid's upper body severed cleanly. Blood sprayed. He hit the dirt dead. Survival instincts kicked in. Tenma snatched the dropped sword just before the boss landed another hit. The hooded monster dropped from the canopy, swinging with terrifying speed. Tenma barely raised the blade in time. The impact rattled his entire skeleton and launched him backward into a tree. He crashed to the dirt, coughing blood, one blocked attack already putting him on the absolute brink of death. Heavy footsteps approached. The boss strolled over, twirling its blades with sadistic pleasure. Above Tenma's head, the red countdown hit 432. He stared at the numbers through bloody vision, wondering what the hell the system was counting down to. Bitter disappointment washed over him. He'd finally gotten a second chance, only to get speedrun by a goblin in the first 5 minutes. If an SSS rank god like Amamiya had regressed instead, everything would have been different. He was a talentless loser who just ruined humanity's last hope. Tears of blood streamed down his face as the timer hit 1, then 0. The world went dead silent. The interface erupted in violent red light. System windows spammed his vision. Causal Adjustment Protocol Deus Ex Machina had successfully executed, forcibly overriding reality to fix the user's inherent defects. Causality rebalanced itself and granted Tenma the legendary X-class trait, Talentless Adjustment. Skill acquisition rate drastically boosted. All experience points multiplied by an absurd 100,000 times. Tenma's eyes snapped open in sheer shock. 100,000 multiplier. The system flagged his broken body, unlocked passive skill endurance level 1, and immediately applied the 100,000x multiplier. Blue notification screens exploded. Endurance leveled to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and finally leveled 10 max in a fraction of a second. A defense skill he'd never leveled once in his entire previous life had just maxed out instantly. Endurance level 10 reduced all incoming damage by 25%, pain by 30%, and enabled full physical movement even after fatal injuries. His fingers tightened around the sword. His broken body was moving again. The boss lunged to finish him. Tenma rolled clear, stood tall, and faced the monster with a cold smile on his blood-soaked face. The system had literally rewritten its framework just to compensate for his absolute trash talent. A 100,000x multiplier was a ridiculously broken cheat code. Flashbacks of the destroyed future raced through his mind. Kyoya dying, humanity wiped out by demons. His eyes blazed with resolve. He swore to his fallen loved ones that he would use this insane experience cheat to grow strong enough to rewrite history. He raised the sword, cold determination dripping from his eyes, and vowed to change the future no matter what. Standing face to face with the named monster, Tenma glanced at his status window again. X-class trait talentless adjustment. Skill acquisition rate skyrocketed, experience points multiplied by 100,000. He'd unlocked a passive skill just by tanking a single hit from an elite boss, and it had maxed out to level 10, 25% damage reduction, 30% less pain, and the ability to keep fighting through fatal wounds. With this absurd cheat code, he actually had a shot at surviving the death trap. Ku Chulain let out a low guttural growl and lunged like a rabid beast, dual blades flashing. Tenma brought his stolen sword up just in time. Sparks exploded. The moment their weapons collided, a blue system notification announced the 100,000x multiplier had activated and bestowed swordsmanship level 1. Tenma's eyes widened as the system went into overdrive. Level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, level 10 max in milliseconds. The explosive power boost blew both fighters back. The goblin growled in pure confusion at the sudden spike in the human's strength. Swordsmanship maxed. Normal hunters bled and sweated for decades to level a basic skill. His trait maxed it in less than a second. Just holding the sword felt completely different, like an elite master swordsman testing the weight of level 10. Before he could celebrate, a sharp whistle tore through the air. The boss vanished and reappeared directly above him, dual blade dropkick crashing down. Tenma blocked the overhead crush. The shockwave cracked the ground beneath his boots. He grunted under the pressure, but the system chimed again. Simultaneous activation of endurance level 10 and swordsmanship level 10. With a fierce battle cry, he thrust upward, blowing the dual blades back and breaking the lock. Both combatants skidded across the dirt. The green monster let out an eerie cackling laugh, completely unbothered. Sweating while holding his guard, Tenma realized the raw physical strength gap was still way too wide. Turtling up was a death sentence. The boss gave him zero breathing room, launching into a high-speed whirlwind of spinning scimitars. Sparks flew as Tenma frantically parried every swing. If the drag-out fight continued, his stamina would bottom out and he'd get shredded. He locked focus on the monster's subtle shoulder twitches, forcing himself to read the attack trajectory before the blades even swung. The system chimed. Perception level 1 unlocked, then instantly maxed to level 10. Time slowed to a crawl. The goblin hung suspended midair, while Tenma's eyes sharpened with absolute clarity. His vision had completely changed. He could read every kinetic vector, predicting the exact arc of the incoming strike before it landed. He sidestepped the downward cut with surgical grace, tilted his blade, and cleanly deflected the scimitar. The monster stumbled forward off balance. Tenma delivered a sharp countercut while dodging, watching the ground crack beneath their feet. Hyper-aware perspective, the exact world high-rank hunters lived in on the battlefield. He could sense the tree behind him, every surrounding bush, even individual leaves swaying in the breeze. The goblin finally stopped cackling. Glowing blue eyes narrowed as it dropped into a deadly low center stance, all playfulness gone. True killing intent. With an enraged roar, it charged like a green bullet, unleashing a flurry of whip-like wind slashes that tore up the landscape. Tenma readied to parry, but the twin scimitars split into blurred ghost cuts, an afterimage sword technique. Static guard wasn't enough. He needed distance. The second he focused on stepping back, footwork level 1 unlocked and instantly maxed to level 10. Powered by max-level movement, Tenma kicked off the dirt and shot backward through the trees like a rocket, landing several yards away. He looked back at the distance he'd just covered, surprised a simple step launched him that far. The goblin twirled its blades in pure irritation. Tenma looked down at his feet with a confident smirk. Body felt ridiculously light. The system confirmed simultaneous activation of swordsmanship level 10 and footwork level 10. He took a deep breath, declared he could actually win this, and launched forward with explosive speed. He rocketed across the field like lightning, thrusting the stolen blade straight into the boss's guard. Heavy metallic impact. Both warriors dashed past each other in a high-speed draw cut. They skidded to a halt on opposite sides of the clearing. A fresh line of dark blood slowly dripped down the goblin's cheek. Tenma turned with a cocky smirk and casually asked how that felt. The wounded boss snapped, roaring in pure rage, and sprinted full force for a final duel. The forest erupted into massive dust clouds as the two warriors collided in a high-speed clash of steel, trading relentless blows that shattered surrounding trees and leveled the terrain. Outside the gate, a glowing blue portal swirled on a cliffside overlooking the valley. A sleek, attractive blonde woman in a sharp business suit let out a heavy sigh of annoyance, complaining about what kind of total idiot manages to get stranded inside a low-level F-class gate. C-class Hunter Yuna Shurigane, official rescue team from the Hunter Association. She checked her phone, complaining that dealing with association middle management was like talking to a brick wall. The association only issued a rescue request because the clearance deadline was exceeded. She assumed the rookie guild was just slacking off. She raised her hand, swirling blue magical energy gathering around her body, and activated teleportation level 2. A dark void portal tore open. She stepped through, and her arrogant smirk vanished. Eyes widened in pure horror at the bloodbaths. Dozens of severed goblin bodies and slaughtered Night Crow Guild members scattered across the clearing. She covered her mouth in disgust, muttering that whoever cleared the entrance went completely wild, then yelled into the silent woods asking if anyone from Night Crow was still breathing. Deeper in, she stopped dead at giant cracked craters and destroyed Earth that looked like a bomb went off. No way a battle of this scale belonged in an F-class gate. Heavy metallic clashes echoed in the distance. She rushed through the trees and peeked through the foliage. The goblin boss Ku Chulain stood in the middle of the ruined field, completely battered, one arm cleanly severed, blood dripping as it leaned heavily on its giant scimitar. Opposite it stood Tenma, covered in blood, panting heavily but holding his sword with complete dominance. Yuna shivered in absolute terror. A simple goblin's aura was strong enough to make a C-rank hunter shake in her boots. The wounded boss let out a low growl, then spoke fluent human language in a deep, menacing tone, announcing its name was Ku Chulain. Yuna gasped. A monster speaking like a human. Tenma watched calmly as the named boss declared it would definitely return to repay this debt in blood. The monster slammed its scimitar into the ground, triggering a dark escape spell that exploded into a massive wall of thick smoke. When the dust cleared, the boss was gone. Tenma stood victorious in the quiet field. Yuna stepped out from the bushes, staring at the destroyed terrain in utter confusion. Extreme physical strain finally caught up to Tenma. His legs buckled. He sank onto his knees, using the sword as a prop. Yuna panicked, sprinting over and shouting if he was okay. She grabbed his shoulder, explaining she was part of the Hunter Association rescue team sent to find the Night Crow Guild, asking where the rest of his team was, and pointing out how horribly injured he was. Tenma looked up weakly through blood-soaked vision, then lifted 2 fingers in a cocky peace sign. With a playful smirk, he told her he was her savior and not to forget it, right before passing out from total exhaustion and collapsing face-first onto the ground. Sometime later, Yuna sat beside his unconscious body, resting her head in her hand with a stressed sigh, inwardly groaning over how on earth she was supposed to write an official report for this insane disaster. Tenma woke in a bright, sunlit hospital room, soft groan escaping as he felt the white bandages wrapped around his forehead and cheek. He pulled back the window curtain and gazed down at the peaceful hospital courtyard, where recovering patients strolled and rode in wheelchairs. Tapping a floating status screen, he chuckled under his breath. The crazy time travel experience wasn't a dream. He scrolled through his broken skill list, marveling at the insane roster unlocked after a single battle. Swordsmanship level 10, Strength level 10, Perception level 10, Footwork level 10, Taijutsu level 10, Agility level 10. Status confirmed, 24 years old level 2 F-rank X-class trait Talentless Adjustment. In his past life, he'd spent 2 decades without unlocking a single skill. One fight in the past had granted him a full kit of maxed out abilities. He tapped the trait icon again. Experience gain boosted by 10 million%. Special effects slot still locked. Talentless Adjustment was basically an absolute system balance patch handed to him because his natural talent was total trash. He wondered if the system would have given the same cheat to SSS rank hunter Kakeru Amamiya if he had regressed instead, then laughed it off. A natural-born god like Amamiya awakened with cheat powers from day one and would never need a pity trait. No point overthinking logic patches. He needed to focus entirely on what he could accomplish in this new timeline. The hospital room door slid open. A female voice called out in surprise that he was already awake. C-class hunter Yuna Shurigane stepped in wearing her sharp business suit, mentioning that the doctors swore he would be unconscious for at least another week. Tenma looked down at his unbandaged hands and realized that even without a dedicated healing skill, his body felt completely refreshed. Right on cue, a blue system interface popped up over his hand, displaying Natural Recovery Level 10, superhuman boost to the body's natural healing capabilities. He must have unlocked and maxed out a passive recovery skill while knocked out cold in the dirt. Yuna walked up to his bedside, hands on hips with an annoyed scowl, asking if he was seriously going to ignore his savior. Tenma looked at her with a completely deadpan face and asked who she was. Yuna exploded, yelling that they literally just met inside the monster gate. She whipped out her official Hunter Association ID card, introducing herself as Yuna Shurigane, C-rank hunter sent by the association, claiming she was the hero who rescued him when he fainted during the goblin fight. Tenma looked at her card, mentally remembering that the named boss Ku Chulain only retreated because her arrival disrupted the fight. He recalled the original history of his timeline, how Ku Chulain stood over her dead body after butchering the entire association investigation squad. He looked at her out loud and calmly pointed out that actually, he was the one who saved her life. Yuna gave a subtle nod, begrudgingly admitting he helped out a little bit, mentioning that the surviving members of the Night Crow Guild who were hiding in the bushes testified on his behalf. They told the association how insanely strong the dual-wielding named monster was. Tenma smirked softly, relieved that other hunters managed to survive the gate incident this time around. But Yuna's face turned serious. Their survival was actually a massive problem. Tenma raised an eyebrow. She revealed that the association official board decided not to give him any public credit for defeating the goblin boss, announcing that an unknown F-rank defeated a named monster would ruin their credibility. Tenma swung his legs over the bed, stood up, and walked right past her while casually stating that he did not give a single damn about clout. Yuna flinched in shock and sprinted after him down the hallway, yelling if he wasn't frustrated. This was his one chance to become famous overnight as the mysterious F-rank hero who saved a guild. Tenma kept walking in silence, inwardly reflecting on the bigger picture. The demon race's true goal was to leak out of gates and conquer the real world. Ku Chulain's unexpected appearance in an F-class gate was definitely a coordinated prelude to their invasion. Letting the demons hiding in society find out that a random F-rank hunter ruined their secret operation would make him their primary target. He envisioned demon spies secretly disguised as normal humans walking among crowds in the city streets. Keeping a low profile was his best play. Turning back to Yuna, he flatly stated that if their conversation was over, he was leaving. Yuna shouted at him to wait, demanding to know why an F-rank like him entered the Night Crow Guild's private gate in the first place. Tenma turned over his shoulder and threw out a totally bogus excuse about needing money, claiming he was just trying to sneak into the gate to steal some dropped mana crystals. He opened the exit door, walked out, and slammed it shut behind him. Yuna crossed her arms in the hallway, muttering to herself about what a total weirdo he was. Outside the hospital, Tenma strolled through the bustling commercial district in casual clothes. Vendors shouted through megaphones. Schoolgirls ate octopus snacks on sticks. Crowds enjoyed peaceful daily life. He smiled softly, appreciating the world before its destruction. He walked up to a clean apartment complex, typed the passcode into the digital lock, and stepped inside his old home. After all those years of apocalypse, nothing had changed. He flopped onto the sofa with a long sigh, staring up at the ceiling. Raising his hand toward the light, he pondered what steps he needed to take to alter humanity's extinction fate. Normally, the association's top heroes would be investigating the Night Crow Guild incident right about now. He suddenly gasped, remembering how he smugly told Yuna he was her savior before passing out. Tenma buried his face in both hands, facepalming in utter embarrassment as he called himself a total idiot for making such a cringe scene. Because he solved the incident himself, the association wasn't investigating anything. History had already diverged. He pulled up his blue status window showing the 1,000,000% experience multiplier, and realized he was the only person on the planet capable of stopping the apocalypse. He clenched his fist tightly, and declared that he needed to become stronger than anyone else to intercept every major disaster before it escalated. In his past life, he had been a massive fan of Monthly Hunter magazine, so he knew about most historical gate catastrophes. He visualized old magazine covers featuring famous hunters and demon threats, then broke into a cold sweat. He couldn't remember the specific details, locations, or dates. He cursed under his breath, but his eyes suddenly snapped open. Perception skill allowed him to process visual information at a hyper-advanced level. If he could boost his brain power, he might force his memory to recall those details. He sat up straight on the couch, grabbed a massive textbook titled Advanced Quantum Mechanics for Experts, dragged the heavy book to a local library, and sat at a quiet desk with the textbook spread out in front of him. Reading complex theoretical physics would force his brain into hyperdrive and trigger a memory skill. He stared at pages filled with dense quantum mechanics equations. After a few minutes, he collapsed face first onto the desk with a heavy thud, groaning in total defeat because he couldn't understand a single word. He whined under his breath about how stupid he was being, but right as he was about to give up, a blue system notification glowed above his head, detecting high-level intellectual activity. The system spammed notifications instantly, unlocking intelligence level 1 through level 10 max. Tenma sat back in his chair with a soft laugh, holding the textbook while marveling that his stupid plan actually worked. Intelligence level 10 granted magic mastery plus 25%, magic damage plus 10%, and mana plus 10%. Combining intelligence level 10 and perception level 10 might allow him to dig into his subconscious memories. He closed his eyes and focused deeply. A blue system prompt accessed his subconscious memory bank using his twin maxed-out mental skills. Suddenly, he found himself standing inside a dark mental void, surrounded by infinite cascading film reels. He told himself to remember every detail built up in his past life. The film reels flashed with vivid memories of his past timeline, monster fights, conversations with Kyoya, apocalyptic demon attacks. System alerts flooded the void, unlocking memory search level 1 all the way through level 10 max, activating perfect recall of every memory buried in his subconscious. Tenma's eyes snapped open back at the library desk. A confident smirk spread across his face. He now possessed perfect photographic memory of the entire future timeline. He stood up from the desk and stated that the very first thing he needed to recall was his bank account password. Later that afternoon at Bumchan Cafe 247, Tenma used his pattern lock to open his smartphone. He stood at the cafe counter paying for a drink, sighing in relief now that he finally unlocked his bank app. But when he checked his phone screen, he broke into a cold sweat, staring at his pathetic balance of 2,782 yen. He mentally facepalmed, complaining that he was dead broke both before and after his regression. The cafe barista politely asked if he was ready to order, snapping him out of his inner crisis. A moment later, Tenma sat outdoors on the cafe balcony terrace, sipping an iced coffee under the bright blue sky. He let out a satisfied sigh, took another sip while looking down at the pedestrians walking on the street below. Then his expression turned deadly serious. His true battle started now. He vowed to hunt down every single demon hiding in human society before they could evolve into world-ending threats. His very first target, the Demon of Growth, the absolute first demon entity to ever appear before humanity. His smartphone vibrated on the table, displaying an incoming call from a contact named Hiroki Gondo. Tenma stared at the screen, wondering who Hiroki Gondo was. He answered the call. A rough, arrogant voice instantly screamed through the speaker, calling him a filler boy and ordering him to get over to Seikyu Hachioji City right now to help harvest mana crystals. Tenma held the phone to his ear as memory search level 10 automatically triggered, instantly pulling up the guy's identity. Sleazy team leader from a hunter talent agency. Back when Tenma was an F-rank weakling, he worked low-paying substitute day jobs for guilds short on manpower. The agency leader barked into the phone, telling him to stop wasting time and get over there immediately. Tenma replied with a deadpan face, flatly telling the guy that he could not make it. The team leader shouted in disbelief, asking why. Tenma looked into the distance with a dark, serious glare, and calmly explained that he did not have taxi fare. A few moments later, a yellow taxi was speeding down the city highway toward the destination. Inside the backseat, Tenma relaxed against the leather cushions, smirking to himself because he knew the desperate team leader would pay for the cab anyway. He pulled up his complete status screen, admiring his maxed-out roster featuring Talentless Adjustment X, Swordsmanship level 10, Strength level 10, Perception level 10, Footwork level 10, Taijutsu level 10, Agility level 10, and Intelligence level 10. The taxi pulled up to a scenic park near a massive glowing blue gate portal. Tenma stepped out onto the pavement. Standing near the portal bridge was a full squad of rough, heavily armed hunters waiting for their substitute. Our boy walked down the stone bridge toward the gate with his hands in his pockets, a confident smirk spreading across his face as he declared that it was time to test out his new powers. Walking across the stone bridge toward the glowing blue dungeon portal, Tenma approached the Kuriboshi Guild raid party standing at the gate entrance. The guild leader turned around with a furious scowl, aggressively shouting that he was late, warning him to get his act together and asking if he was going to take full responsibility if they missed the gate's clearance deadline. System title card identified the angry leader as Kuriboshi Guild Guildmaster D-rank Hunter Koki Kazama. Instead of apologizing, Tenma glared back with a cold, terrifying gaze. Kazama instantly flinched in shock while breaking into a cold sweat, stuttering out an awkward question asking if Tenma wanted to fight. Right at that moment, a blue system window popped up above his head, announcing that by intimidating an opponent he had unlocked the skill Intimidation, which was immediately multiplied by his 100,000 times experience trait. A storm of system notifications spammed his vision, unlocking Intimidation Level 1, Level 2, and Level 3 in a split second. Detailed skill window explained that Intimidation weakened targets by reducing all their stats by 9%, though it only worked on opponents of equal or lower rank than the user. Tenma chuckled mentally, considering this free skill an unexpected harvest. Holding out his open hand toward the guildmaster, he bluntly asked Kazama to lend him some usable gear. Kazama flinched again, thoroughly rattled by the weakling's overwhelming pressure, before turning to his bandana-wearing guild member and sweating profusely while telling him to just lend the substitute anything he wanted. The bandana-wearing hunter saluted with a crisp response while Kazama turned toward the glowing blue portal, ordering the raid party to follow him inside. As the team marched through the gate, two rookie guild members whispered behind their leader's back, joking that the guildmaster was totally freaked out by the new guy. Once inside the dark cave dungeon, a sudden flash of silver light sliced through the air, sending a severed goblin body crashing onto the rocky floor. The Kuriboshi Guild clearing squad stood in the middle of the cavern surrounded by slaughtered monsters, and the bandana-wearing hunter wiped his bloody blade with a satisfied sigh. He turned around and shouted over to the substitute porter, barking at the kid to hurry up and clean up the monster corpses. The young substitute porter panicked, shouting back a nervous confirmation before sprinting over with a giant backpack strapped to his shoulders. The young guy dropped to his knees beside a dead goblin, thrusting his small harvesting knife into the monster's chest while grunting with physical strain. Tenma stepped up behind him, calmly asking if the kid had a spare dagger he could borrow. The young porter turned around in surprise, reaching into his supply bag to hand over a sleek spare dagger. Tenma took the blade, crouching over a dead goblin and thrusting the dagger cleanly into the monster's chest with surgical precision. Blood sprayed violently across the cave floor as he expertly dissected the corpse, making the young porter stare in complete and total shock. System alerts flooded the interface, harvesting loot from the monster while unlocking the skill dismantling level 1 through level 10 max. Tenma held out his open palm, presenting a cluster of perfectly harvested glowing orange mana crystals without a single flaw. The young porter gasped in awe at the sheer quality, while Tenma calmly wiped his bloodied hands on a rag, kneeling over the remaining corpses before looking up with a subtle smile and declaring that it was time to move on. Deep inside the dungeon cavern, a massive pile of dead goblins and wolf magic beasts lay scattered across the stone floor. Two Kuriboshi guild members leaned on their heavy swords, commenting on how ridiculously fast the gate raid was moving today, agreeing that everyone must be in top shape. The bandana-wearing hunter turned back to check on the harvesting crew, calling out to tell them to hurry up, before lecturing Tenma that an F-rank substitute should just stick to basic harvesting. But the moment he looked over, his jaw dropped in sheer disbelief as he saw a gigantic, perfectly organized mountain of flawlessly preserved wolf hides and goblin materials stacked behind Tenma. Below the pile, the young porter was happily packing the high-tier loot into his bag, while system item cards highlighted the harvested quality as perfectly preserved wolf magic beast hide F++ and high-quality wolf fang F++. The bandana-wearing hunter and his teammates stared at the pristine white wolf fangs in total shock, sweating bullets as the team leader stammered out a shaky order to keep moving forward. Walking down the dark cavern corridor, the young porter chatted happily beside Tenma, admitting that gate raids usually took forever because his harvesting was super slow, asking how Tenma managed to harvest monster loot so fast and perfectly. Tenma walked casually with his heavy sword strapped to his back, offering a polite smile. Suddenly, a ferocious, guttural growl echoed from the shadows ahead, and a tall, heavily muscular green goblin warrior stepped into the light holding a curved scimitar. The monster's snarl featured a dark ritual tattoo etched onto its shoulder. Tenma looked over, asking if they missed a stray mob. The young porter panicked, sweating profusely as he identified the shoulder tattoo, screaming that this monster was a captain-class goblin mob. Tenma slowly reached over his shoulder, gripping the hilt of his heavy broadsword while thinking that he had been waiting for a mini-boss event like this to test his limits. He unsheathed the blade with a crisp metallic slide, but the young porter lost his mind, screaming at Tenma to watch out because it was way too dangerous. The kid trash-talked Tenma at the top of his lungs, yelling that Tsukashiro was just a useless F-rank hunter who could not even kill a single basic goblin, calling him a complete liability and dead weight. Tenma looked back over his shoulder with a deadpan, sweat-dropping expression, thoroughly done with the kid's dramatic shouting. In front of them, the goblin captain let out a sadistic chuckle, raising its clawed hand to summon backup. Heavy stomping footsteps echoed through the cavern, and 4 additional goblins armed with spears, axes, and heavy iron clubs stepped out of the darkness to join their captain. Seeing 5 elite goblins surround them, the young porter dropped to his knees in utter despair, clutching his head while crying out that an F-rank hunter facing 5 goblins was a guaranteed death sentence. Tenma grit his teeth with an annoyed expression, muttering that the kid was being way too dramatic. The 5 goblins shrieked in unison, charging forward across the stone floor with raised weapons. Our boy stood his ground, his eyes flashing with a sinister red light as the blue system interface activated his intimidation skill. A suffocating wave of dark, crushing aura erupted from Tenma's body, completely engulfing the entire cavern corridor. The charging goblins froze dead in their tracks, their eyes widening in pure horror as the terrifying pressure crushed their spirits. System notifications flooded the screen, leveling intimidation to level 4 as the lead goblin dropped its scimitar onto the floor in sheer terror. The notifications spammed up to intimidation level 5, making the second goblin drop its heavy axe and collapse onto its knees. The system spammed up to intimidation level 6 and level 7, causing the remaining goblins to drop their spears and fall flat on their faces, completely paralyzed by fear. All 5 attacking goblins lay helpless on the cavern floor, while the goblin captain in the back stood trembling in cold sweat, hyperventilating in utter shock. Tenma looked down at the paralyzed horde with a cocky smirk, thinking that the intimidation skill was an absolute masterpiece. Suddenly a thud echoed beside him. Tenma looked over, seeing the young porter lying flat on his back with a cartoon soul floating out of his mouth from sheer shock. Our hero chuckled mentally, noting that the kid was knocked out cold too, meaning he did not have to worry about hiding his true strength. Turning back toward the trembling goblin captain, Tenma took a step forward, simultaneously activating his maxed-out skills. Swiftness level 10, agility level 10, and swordsmanship level 10. Our guy vanished from his spot like a phantom, shooting across the floor at blinding speed as the goblin captain's eyes widened in sheer horror. Silver sword flashes illuminated the dark cave as Tenma traded high-speed strikes with the mini-boss, the metallic clashing echoing like thunder as he casually asked if they should test out his new combat stats. He overwhelmed the captain with relentless pressure, forcing the monster back with every strike while high-speed sparks exploded across the cavern walls. A violent red shockwave erupted from their final clash, and the goblin captain fell back, bleeding heavily and panting for air. Tenma stood calmly, inspecting his bloodied broadsword with a thoughtful expression. He reflected in black thought bubbles, realizing he assumed that simply fighting would unlock fancy new combat skills like before, but it turned out that advanced skills required genuine effort and practice. He acknowledged that while talentless adjustment made acquiring basic foundational skills ridiculously easy, it did not change the core reality that his body possessed zero natural talent. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, Tenma stepped forward and executed a lightning-fast draw cut straight through the captain's neck. Blood sprayed as the mini-boss's head flew into the air, its lifeless body crashing onto the dirt, while a blue system window announced that his talentless adjustment X trait had activated. The system interface chimed, multiplying his earned experience points by 100,000, triggering a chaotic storm of blue level-up screens that flooded the air around him. A massive glowing red system window suddenly exploded with power, announcing that he had officially reached level 20. A chibi visual of Tenma looked at the screen in confusion, wondering how he leveled up so fast considering he did not even get the kill credit for Ku Chulain earlier. He tapped the red window, realizing he had jumped straight to level 20 and his level bar was now completely locked. Suddenly, a cute chibi version of Yuna Shurigane popped up over a locked padlock icon, offering a quick system explanation. She explained that once a hunter's level hits a lock, they cannot gain any more levels until they clear their official awakening quest. She added that awakening quests occur every 20 levels, and during the lock period, all earned experience gets converted into system points instead. A system note clarified that hunter ranks jump directly from F rank to D rank without an E rank. Tenma read the text, realizing that the points awarded during the lock could be spent directly in the system shop. Curiosity getting the better of him, Tenma touched the glowing red screen, but a sudden jolt of violent red electricity zapped his fingers, making him yelp in pain. Rubbing his stinging hand, our hero wondered when his awakening quest would officially spawn, deciding to wait it out and figure out what shop items to buy later. He walked over to the unconscious young porter, tapping the kid's shoulder and telling him to wake up because it was time to harvest the bodies. The young porter groaned, rubbing his drooling mouth before looking ahead, only to freeze in absolute terror as he saw all 5 goblins plus the captain lying dead with their heads sliced off. The kid screamed in shock, stammering out how on earth the captain and the entire squad got wiped out. Tenma offered a totally deadpan lie, calmly claiming that some unknown elite hunter must have defeated them for them, urging the kid to start dismantling. Both hunters knelt over the corpses, harvesting mana crystals and hides, while Tenma opened his main status window to review his stats. His status card displayed level 20 locked, F rank, talentless adjustment X, and listed his maxed out skills. Swordsmanship level 10, strength level 10, perception level 10, footwork level 10, agility level 10, natural recovery level 10, endurance level 10, memory search level 10, intelligence level 10, dismantling level 10, and intimidation level 10. He stared at the locked level 20 text with a serious expression, worrying about his progression pace. Our hero thought deeply, realizing he could not afford to stay stagnant at level 20 if he wanted to balance his training and hunt down the demon race before the apocalypse. Suddenly, the red system window in front of him began flickering with intense static, displaying an alarming new notification. The red text stated that because he reached the maximum level 20 for F rank without clearing his quest, the difficulty of his upcoming awakening quest would continuously increase over time. Tenma's eyes narrowed in sheer disbelief as he read the warning, realizing that the system was penalizing him for sitting at the level cap. He stared down at the glowing red interface, breaking into a cold sweat as he realized this unexpected difficulty. Ramp was going to turn his awakening trial into a complete nightmare. Staring at the glowing red system window floating in front of his face, Tenma's eyes widened in sheer shock, mentally declaring that the new notification was completely insane. He crouched over the dead goblin corpses in the dark cave, smirking to himself as he inspected the detailed breakdown of the system prompt. Below him, the young substitute porter watched Tenma grin at the dead bodies, sweating profusely in total disgust while wondering if the new guy was some kind of freak necrophiliac. Unaware of the kid's misunderstanding, our boy read the red system text detailing his upcoming awakening quest, which warned that the quest difficulty would increase drastically, but promised an incredible reward. Trait Evolution Talentless Adjustment Limit Break. The detailed system interface broke down 5 game-changing upgrades. First, skill acquisition difficulty and probability would significantly increase. Second, his experience points gained would remain boosted by a massive 100,000 times. Third, the maximum skill level cap of 10 would be completely removed, alongside a permanent one. 2x boost to all his base stats. Fourth, special items would be provided whenever an awakening quest began. And fifth, the standard system shop would officially evolve into the causality reversal shop. Tenma's mind raced as he processed the trait evolution, realizing this trial was fundamentally different from any standard hunter awakening quest. Right beside the red interface, a second system notification chimed, confirming the completion of the F-rank limit break quest conditions and granting him a permanent +1 increase to all skill max levels, a 1.2x stat multiplier per level, and immediate access to the causality reversal shop. Our hero smiled brightly with hype, realizing that the moment he officially promoted to D rank, his combat power was going to explode to godlike levels. Opening his quest tab, he reviewed his active main objective, which read, Demon Subjugation 0 out of 1. Recalling his photographic memories from his past timeline, he calculated that 3 days from now a specific gate would spawn a terrifying entity destined to become a legion commander and slaughter millions of humans, the Demon of Growth. A terrifying mental visual flashed in his mind, depicting the horned, hulking Demon of Growth standing over a ruined city while holding a severed human head. Below the red quest screen, Tenma noticed a tiny secondary blue window floating nearby, wondering what the extra notification was. The young substitute porter walked past, turning around to ask if Tsukishiro-san was coming along. Tenma casually replied that he was right behind him while tapping the glowing blue screen. The system prompt announced that due to the passive effects of talentless adjustment, special awakening gear had been dispatched, granting him a rare weapon box special. Our boy blinked in surprise, marveling at receiving a free rare-grade weapon box right off the bat. He tapped his inventory icon, selecting the weapon box to open it, which triggered a sudden, blinding burst of golden and blue radiant light that illuminated the dark cavern. As the blinding light faded, a sleek, glowing blue longsword materialized directly into his hand, and the system interface officially announced that he had acquired the special Sword Soul Eater rare. Tenma held the humming blue blade in awe, admiring the weapon's ethereal magic aura. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the exterior of the gate portal at sunset, as the Kuroboshi Guild raid party officially exited the gate. The young substitute porter waved a cheerful goodbye to the guild members, shouting for the guildmaster to take care while thanking them for a great raid. Walking alongside the kid, Tenma smirked softly to himself, calculating that in this timeline his young nephew Kyoya was probably around 6 years old right now. Guildmaster Koki Kazama walked up to our hero, holding out his smartphone screen and telling Tenma to check his bank deposit. Tenma checked his phone app, seeing a fresh deposit of 50,000 yen directly from Koki Kazama of the Kuroboshi Guild. Our guy looked up in surprise, pointing out that his daily substitute pay was supposed to come directly from the hiring agency, and asking why the amount was 50,000 yen instead of the standard 35,000 yen rate. Kazama nervously scratched his cheek with a blushing smile, while a blonde female guild member stood beside him with a warm grin. Kazama explained that he wired a separate personal payment to cover the agency fees, telling Tenma to keep the extra cash as a personal bonus for his hard work, thanking him for making the entire gate raid run so insanely smooth. Kazama and the female guild member waved goodbye, walking across the bridge while calling out "see ya" over their shoulders. Tenma stood watching them leave, smirking softly as he reflected on how he used to think the world was a total hopeless dump, but now realized that the moment a hunter flexed real power, everyone automatically respected them. Suddenly, a loud, comedic rumble echoed from his stomach, making our boy hold his belly as he realized he had completely forgotten how starving he was. He pulled out his phone with a smile, thinking that now that he had some decent pocket cash, he should go grab a nice meal. But right at that moment, his phone vibrated with a bank text notification at 1721, confirming a deposit of only 4,500 yen from XX Bank, followed immediately by a text message from Hiroki Gondo stating that he had deducted the taxi fare from his pay. Tenma's face instantly twisted in pure anime rage, veins popping on his forehead as he screamed under his breath, furious that the greedy agency boss only paid him 4,500 yen. Later that night, the scene shifted to the exterior of a Mart supermarket under the starry night sky. Inside the brightly lit grocery store, Tenma was standing in the produce aisle, holding a fresh head of broccoli up to his face, while dramatically taking deep breaths in and out. Our boy closed his eyes with a blissed-out expression, inhaling the fresh vegetable scent while thinking that back in his ruined future timeline, survivors could not even dream of seeing fresh, uncorrupted vegetables. Suddenly, a female voice called out his name from behind his shoulder, making him turn around. Standing right behind him was C-Class Hunter Yuna Shurigane, wearing casual clothes, round glasses, and holding a green grocery shopping basket. Tenma looked at her flatly, asking if the Hunter Association officially ordered her to stalk him. Yuna flustered instantly, pointing at him in anger while shouting that she was just doing her normal grocery shopping, demanding to know why he was dramatically sniffing a piece of broccoli in public. Tenma nonchalantly replied that he was simply smelling how fresh it was, leaving Yuna sweating in awkward silence behind her glasses. Yuna thought in black bubbles that she definitely needed to keep a close eye on this weird guy. Tenma stared at her face, suddenly feeling a strong sense of familiarity as his memory search level 10 skill automatically triggered. In his mind, memory film reels spun rapidly, comparing Yuna Shurigane's casual face to a legendary figure from his past timeline. Tenma's eyes widened with realization, and he asked Yuna out loud if she happened to have an older sister named Yuki Shurigane. Yuna gasped in utter shock, her mouth dropping open as she frantically asked how on earth he knew about her older sister. Tenma thought in black bubbles that there was no way he would not know her, as a dramatic visual flashed of Yuki Shurigane, the infinite archer of the last 11, wielding a massive flaming bow on a battleground. Narration text highlighted her legendary reputation as humanity's hope, famously known by her terrifying alias, the Goblin Slayer. An epic vision showed Yuki Shurigane raining down thousands of flaming arrows on a massive goblin army. Tenma remembered from his past life that the infinite archer turned into a cold-blooded monster hunter after her younger sister was brutally killed by goblins in a gate. Our hero realized that because he stepped in and saved Yuna during the Yatoi Guild Gate incident, Yuna survived, meaning her older sister Yuki never succumbed to vengeance and never became the Goblin Slayer. Yuna lined in urgently, demanding to know how he knew her sister. Tenma threw out a smooth, cocky line, casually claiming it was because her older sister was beautiful. Yuna blushed slightly, asking so what, and Tenma smiled, adding that Yuna looked just like her. Yuna turned bright red, steam blowing from her head as she flustered, screaming what on earth that was supposed to mean all of a sudden. Tenma looked at her seriously, remembering that Yuna possessed a high-tier teleportation skill, realizing in his head that he might actually need her mobility support for the upcoming raid against the Demon of Growth. Our boy held out his smartphone, deadpan asking her to give him her phone number. Yuna flinched in surprise, backing away while blushing furiously and asking why he was suddenly asking for her number. Tenma deadpan asked if there was a problem, making Yuna turn her head away coyly while fidgeting, stammering that it was not like she minded, but there was a proper romantic order to these things. Tenma sweat dropped with a totally deadpan face, wondering what kind of weird romantic fantasy she was cooking up in her head. Snapping out of it, Tenma bluntly clarified that he needed her number so she could pay him back for saving her life. Yuna huffed in utter embarrassment, snatching his phone with fiery rage and typing her contact info while screaming at him. Tenma took his phone back, leaving Yuna fuming with anime flames behind her as she stomped away, yelling about what his problem was for making fun of her like that. The scene shifted to the next morning under a clear blue sky, where Tenma was standing near a bus stop with his heavy sword strapped to his hip, checking his phone while thinking that his destination should be nearby. He opened his item interface to inspect the special weapon he acquired the previous day, marveling at its stats. An info window displayed Soul Eater, rank super rare, attack power 30, with a special passive effect that unlocked unique functions by absorbing souls. Tenma noted that super rare was an even higher tier than standard rare, and its attack power of 30 was 3 times stronger than his basic iron sword. However, he knew that a good weapon alone was not enough to defeat the demon of growth, realizing he urgently needed to master an advanced swordsmanship skill. Our boy walked down the sidewalk, reasoning to himself that if you want to learn cooking, you go to a master chef, so if you want to learn god-tier swordsmanship, you go to a master swordsman. He stopped outside a traditional building, featuring a giant sign that read Kirishima Kendo Dojo. Tenma stood at the entrance, knocking politely on the wooden sliding door while saying "excuse me." He slid the door open, peeking inside and noting that the dojo was open. Walking across the polished wooden floor, Tenma recalled historical records from his past timeline, remembering that the swordsman who owned this dojo was a legendary hunter said to have split mountains and cleaved the heavens with a single strike, a true beacon of hope for humanity, famously known as the Sword Saint Teiyo Kirishima. An epic visual depicted the Sword Saint standing in traditional samurai hakama, wielding 2 glowing katanas with radiant sword aura. However, back in reality, a young blue-haired guy sitting at a low desk with a pen yawned lazily, muttering about what a pain it was to deal with people coming in this early in the morning. Hearing footsteps, the blue-haired guy looked over his shoulder, muttering, "Here he comes." Tenma walked up behind him but suddenly froze dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in complete and utter shock. Scattered across the entire wooden floor were hundreds of paper sheets covered in messy, handwritten fan autographs. The blue-haired guy twirled 2 pens in his fingers, turning around with a goofy, fang-toothed smile while yawning, casually asking Tenma if he was a fan and asking where he wanted him to sign his autograph. In the legendary tales of the past, the sword Saint Teiyo Kirishima was celebrated as a godlike warrior whose blade could split the heavens and cleave entire mountains in a single swing, possessing a flawless technique that left everyone in awe. But in Tenma Tsukishiro's actual memories, the guy was a complete goofball who spent his time getting dead drunk and laughing hysterically while bragging about saving the world and signing autographs for random fans. Tenma remembered sitting in a tavern watching the guy brag, sweating in disbelief and thinking the Sword Saint was even worse than the trashy rumors made him out to be. He recalled how in the original timeline, rumors eventually spread that the Sword Saint had died under mysterious circumstances, knowing deep down that the demon race took out humanity's greatest champion before he could stop them. Back in the present day, Teiyo was twirling pens like a clown, asking if Tenma wanted him to sign his back. Our boy noted that the guy had not changed one bit since his youth, though currently nobody recognized him as a legendary ranker yet. Tenma extended his hand politely, stating that he would love to receive his guidance. Teiyo freaked out in complete shock, yelling at the top of his lungs, asking why he did not just say he wanted to be his apprentice from the start. Teiyo grabbed Tenma's head with over-enthusiastic joy, making our guy sweat profusely while mentally wondering if he should just pack up and go home. A few moments later, Tenma was sitting on a couch in Teiyo's office, while the blue-haired swordsman sat opposite him, sipping tea and complaining that for the past month he had done nothing but obsess over designing the perfect autograph. Teiyo then asked how Tenma even found his dojo, pointing out that he had only registered as an inactive hunter and had never done any real guild duty. Teiyo suddenly leaned forward, a fierce, terrifying glare flashing in his eyes as he leaned over the table. Tenma looked at him with a slight sweat drop, gulping nervously. But Teiyo's scary expression instantly vanished, replaced by a goofy grin and a peace sign as he cackled, asking if Tenma fell in love with his swordsmanship during his original hunter measurement test. Tenma's sweat dropped, offering a totally fake confirmation, stating that he was an active hunter hoping Kirishima-san could teach him one of his signature skills. Teiyo puffed out his chest proudly, declaring that since Tenma was his fan, he would give him a special treat, asking which specific technique he wanted to learn. Tenma recalled a drunk conversation from his past life where Teiyo babbled in a tavern, claiming his foundational technique was super simple. Anyone could learn it, and it was the ultimate strike where all true swordsmanship begins. Drunk Teiyo had pointed a finger at him, hiccuping while revealing the name of the move, the straight line slash. Present-day Tenma looked Taeyo in the eye, asking if he would teach him the straight line slash. Taeyo stood up, walking over to the wall rack to pull down a wooden training shinai. He handed the wooden sword to Tenma, telling him to hold it. But before our boy's fingers even touched the hilt, Taeyo tapped his arm with his shinai, scoffing dismissively and declaring that Tenma had zero talent. Tenma reacted in shock, complaining that he had not even held the sword yet. Taeyo waved his hand dismissively, claiming that at his master level he could judge a person's sword talent just by looking at them, advising Tenma to give up on the way of the sword immediately. Tenma stubbornly argued that Taeyo would never know his true potential until he actually tried, making the blue-haired swordsman let out a heavy sigh. Taeyo handed over the wooden shinai, fine, telling him to take it. The second Tenma gripped the hilt tightly with both hands. Taeyo's eye widened in sheer horror as the system chimed, activating swordsmanship level 10. A dense aura of blue magical energy erupted around Tenma, completely transforming his posture the moment his hands touched the wood. Taeyo stammered in total disbelief, unable to process what he was looking at. Tenma looked down at the wooden blade, asking if he still lacked the qualifications. Taeyo stared in complete awe, thinking in black thought bubbles that based on the kid's stance, breathing, and walking form, he looked like a total talentless casual. But the exact second he gripped that sword, his entire aura transformed into that of a master executioner. Taeyo's expression turned serious, ordering Tenma to follow him outside. The scene shifted to the outdoor training yard behind the dojo, where several thick wooden posts were planted into the ground. Taeyo stood in front of a wooden post with his shinai, stating that he would demonstrate the technique first while Tenma watched from behind. Taeyo noted internally that while his own straight-line slash was still an incomplete level 9 skill, he would show off a special service demonstration for his fan. He raised his wooden sword high above his head, taking a deep, focused breath, before swinging it down in a single, blinding vertical strike. A massive shockwave tore through the air, cleanly severing the thick wooden post in half, leaving a smooth cut as the top log fell to the dirt. Taeyo turned back, telling Tenma to give it a shot. Tenma stepped up to a wooden post, raising his shinai high above his head and swinging down with all his physical strength. But instead of slicing the post, his wooden sword bounced off the hard wood with a loud clatter, barely leaving a tiny scratch. Tenma stumbled back in surprise, while Taeyo crossed his arms with a smug sigh, roasting him by stating that our boy had zero innate sense, finding it absurd that he could not perform a basic straight-line slash despite possessing the swordsmanship skill. Tenma refused to quit, hacking away at the wooden post again and again, but his wooden blade kept clattering off uselessly. Taeyo facepalmed in utter disappointment, sighing that at this pathetic rate it would take Tenma 10 whole years to learn the move, noting that it was not even that grand of a technique to begin with. Sweat dripping from his forehead, Tenma asked if there was any other mental trick or explanation to master the form. Taeyo let out an annoyed sigh, a chibai icon complaining that if Tenma were not his fan, he would have kicked him out of the dojo long ago. Taeyo raised his finger, explaining the proper visualization. When swinging the blade up, imagine the sword tip piercing the heavens, and when swinging down, imagine drawing a single line connecting heaven and earth, focusing entirely on keeping that vertical line perfectly straight. Tenma nodded seriously, taking a deep breath and closing his eyes as he raised his wooden shinai once more. He chopped down repeatedly, but his wooden blade kept bouncing off the hard wood with frustrating clatters. Taeyo watched on in total despair, muttering that it was completely hopeless and suggesting they call it a day. But right at that moment, a strange, high-pitched humming sound resonated through the air. Taeyo froze dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in complete shock as a blinding vertical beam of blue sword aura erupted from Tenma's wooden shinai. Taeyo gasped in utter disbelief, asking what on earth he was looking at right now. Our hero executed a picture-perfect vertical swing, his wooden blade slicing through the thick wooden post like warm butter, blasting shockwaves and wood splinters across the yard. Taeyo's jaw dropped as he watched the slashes get sharper and sharper in real time, muttering that this level of rapid adaptation was physically impossible. With a final explosive clash, the thick wooden post shattered down the middle, cleanly split into two perfect halves as Tenma stood in his follow-through posture. Tenma turned back casually, holding his wooden sword while asking if he did it right. Taeyo instantly broke into enthusiastic applause, cheering that he was thoroughly impressed and taking back everything he said about Tenma having no talent. But Taeyo then raised his finger with a devilish grin, claiming that to perform the true straight-line slash, one had to slice 4 wooden posts in a single straight row instead of just one. 4 massive wooden posts stood lined up in a straight path across the grass. Taeyo smirked to himself, thinking that no matter how much hidden talent the kid possessed, cutting 4 posts in a single swing was completely impossible. Tenma stepped forward calmly, stating that he would give it a shot. Taeyo snickered, telling him to go ahead and try, but his jaw instantly dropped to the floor as Tenma took his stance. Our guy raised his wooden shinai high into the air, and a radiant beam of intense blue sword aura gathered around the wooden blade. Taeyo's eye trembled in sheer horror as Tenma brought his wooden sword down in a single catastrophic vertical arc. A massive beam of blue sword energy split the sky and earth, blowing all 4 wooden posts apart simultaneously, cleanly severing every single log down the center. Blue system alerts flooded the screen, confirming the acquisition of Straightline/Level 1, which was immediately multiplied by his 100,000 times limit break trait to instantly grant Straightline/Level 10 max. The sheer force of the slash carved a giant, deep trench straight through the dirt landscape, extending all the way into the distance. Taeyo fell backward onto his rear in absolute shock, staring at the carved trench with a pale, trembling face while asking how on earth he pulled that off. Tenma turned around with a modest, subtle smirk on his face. Later that evening, the scene shifted to Yuna Shurigane's apartment building under an orange sunset sky. Inside her apartment entry hall, a blue portal ripped open with a loud whoosh, and Yuna Shurigane stepped through holding 2 heavy grocery bags, calling out that she was home. Yuna dropped her grocery bags onto the floor with a thud, and a stern female voice scolded her from the living room, telling her not to use her teleportation magic so recklessly, asking what she would do if her skill was on cooldown when it actually mattered. Standing with her arms crossed was Yuki Shurigane, the legendary SSS-class ranker of the Silver Wing Guild. Yuki looked at her younger sister, suddenly noticing her flushed face and asking why her face was bright red. Yuna flustered instantly, adjusting her glasses with a racing heartbeat while stammering out a denial, asking what her sister meant. Yuki pointed out that she was acting completely different from usual, asking if something happened while she was out. Yuna set her glasses on the table, her face turning bright pink as she looked over her shoulder, blushing furiously while asking her sister if she happened to know someone named Tenma Tsukashiro. SSS-class ranker Yuki Shurigane rested her chin on her hand, casually replying that she had never heard that name before in her life. Yuna asked if she was really sure, smiling to herself as she turned away with a relieved grin. Yuki narrowed her eyes in suspicion, asking if her little sister ate something weird for dinner. A few moments later, Yuna was lying on her bed, staring at her phone screen while wondering if Tenma brought up her famous sister's name just as an excuse to get her personal number. Looking at Tenma's saved contact, she smiled, thinking that while he was a total weirdo, he was not bad looking at all. Suddenly, Yuki popped up, sitting on the edge of the bed behind her and playfully asking if she met a guy. Yuna screamed in terror, face-planting into her pillow while Yuki smirked, teasing her sister for being an absolute open book. Yuki leaned over her, probing for details on who the mystery guy was. Yuna muffled through her pillow that it was just the guy who saved her the other day, and when Yuki pressed further, Yuna hugged her pillow tightly, blushing as she insisted it was no big deal and that he just asked for her number. Yuki smiled warmly, telling her that if things went well, she better make sure to introduce him to her. Yuna blushed, agreeing softly. Yuki stood up, mentioning that her guild had a massive large-scale gate raid scheduled for tomorrow, so she would be away for a few days, warning Yuna that Gates had been acting super weird lately, and ordering her not to take on any dangerous association assignments. Yuna hugged her pillow, pouting that her older sister was way too overprotective. Yuki closed the bedroom door behind her, leaving Yuna sitting on her bed, her heart thumping as she stared at Tenma's contact info saved on her screen. Meanwhile, the scene shifted back to the Sunset training field, where system windows flashed above Tenma's head, confirming that he had officially been taught the active skill Kirishima-style straightline/rare, which instantly maxed out to level 10 thanks to his passive limit break trait. Tenma caught his breath, panting heavily while celebrating the fact that he pulled off the technique. Looking at his wooden shinai, our boy realized that while mastering the form was tough, his 100,000 times experience multiplier carried him through the rest. He turned to Taeyo, politely thanking the Sword Saint for his guidance. But Taeyo was on his knees, bowing his head all the way to the grass, desperate as he pleaded for Tenma to perform the move one more time. Tenma looked down in complete confusion, asking what was wrong. Taeyo grabbed Tenma's pant leg in utter desperation, tears streaming down his face as he begged Tenma to show him the slash again, crying out that he could not even see how our hero pulled it off. Taeyo bawled like a baby, whining over how an F-rank substitute managed to reach level 10 max mastery, a realm even he, the creator of the technique, could never attain in just a few quick tries. Tenma sweat dropped, realizing with an awkward face that he had accidentally completely surpassed the Sword Saint's original technique. A detailed system skill card popped up, describing Kirishima-style straightline/level 10 rare, revealing a broken additional effect that allowed the blade to cut through non-physical spectral entities. Tenma pondered in black thought bubbles, calculating that he still had one full day to spare before the Demon of Growth officially spawned, deciding he should milk the Sword Saint to learn as many advanced swordsmanship skills as humanly possible. Seeing Teo begging on his knees, Tenma offered a calm deal, promising to show him the technique again if Teo agreed to teach him all his other sword skills in exchange, officially introducing himself as Tenma Tsukashiro. Teo's eyes filled with tears of emotional joy, screaming master at the top of his lungs before lunging forward and tackling Tenma into an intense bear hug. Teo squeezed our hero like a fanatic, declaring that from this day forward Tenma was his absolute master and promising to teach him every single skill in his arsenal. Tenma suffocated in the crushing hug, sweating with dead eyes while begging the crazy swordsman to let go of him. A moment later, the two stepped out onto the open field under a clear blue sky, where Teo jumped high into the air, unleashing Kirishima-style Form 121 explosive Usura Slash, causing a massive fiery explosion to rock the sky. Teo landed amidst the smoking crater, turning around with a proud smile to ask if his master caught the hang of it. But Tenma was sitting on the grass panting for air with dead eyes, inwardly complaining that he could not even track the Sword Saint's hyperfast movements. Our boy realized that knowing Teo's eccentric personality, the simple straight-line slash was the sole exception, and that he could not even grasp the underlying theory behind his advanced high-tier forms. He sighed, acknowledging that even with talentless adjustment, his lack of natural talent meant he could not just copy complex high-rank moves on the fly. System alerts chimed as his natural recovery level 10 skill activated, wrapping his exhausted body in green healing aura. Tenma caught his breath, standing up and telling Teo that they should call it a day because he had other urgent business to take care of, adding that he looked forward to seeing Teo master the straight-line slash himself. Teo smiled brightly, admitting he still had a long way to go, before confessing that even though he possessed a hunter license, he never planned on actually working as a hunter, but meeting his new master changed his mind. Teo erupted into flaming motivation aura, pumping his fist and roaring that he was officially going to become a full-fledged hunter, while Tenma offered a polite smile and wished him good luck. Later that evening at sunset, Tenma walked into a local blacksmith shop, where an old veteran blacksmith was carefully inspecting the harvested wolf materials. The old craftsman gasped in awe, holding up the perfectly preserved wolf magic beast hide F++ and high-quality wolf fang F++, noting that it was extremely rare to see materials processed with such flawless precision, asking if Tenma learned a high-level dismantling skill. Tenma casually replied that his entire livelihood depended on it. The blacksmith explained that high-quality monster parts granted massive bonus stats when crafting custom gear, promising to pay Tenma a heavy cash premium if he brought in more high-tier loot, patting his shoulder as they walked toward the front display. An item card displayed a basic low-quality leather armor set with a defense stat of +6, and Tenma looked at the starter gear with a deadpan face, inwardly scoffing at the old man's idea of a premium. Still, our boy purchased the leather armor, equipping it under his jacket, while thinking that even basic starter gear made a massive difference in battle. Stepping outside onto the street, he pulled out his phone to make a call. Inside Yuna's apartment, her phone rang on the coffee table, displaying Tenma's contact info. Yuna reached over from the couch, answering with a flustered hello. Tenma's voice came through the speaker, calling her name. Yuna was lounging on her sofa wearing a white beauty face mask, her heart thumping as Tenma said he had something important to tell her. Thinking he was about to confess his feelings, Yuna tried to play hard to get, smugly claiming she was super busy right now and asking if it was really that important. Tenma flatly cut through her romantic delusion, stating over the line that it was about an irregular gait. Yuna froze dead in her tracks, her romantic fantasy completely shattering into broken heart pieces as her face mask slid right off her face and splatted onto her lap. Yuna exploded in pure anime rage, gripping her towel and screaming into the phone in total embarrassment. That night, a blue system tab displayed his active limit break quest, reminding him of his goal to subjugate the Demon of Growth. Tenma stood on his apartment balcony under the moonlight, looking out over the glowing city skyline with his Soul Eater sword resting over his shoulder, declaring that he was completely ready. The next morning, under a bright blue sky, Tenma met up with Yuna near a scenic park lake where a giant blue gate portal was swirling. Yuna apologized for being late, asking if he waited long, and Tenma casually replied that it was no big deal. Walking toward the portal, Yuna asked if his insider info about an irregular gate anomaly was actually reliable, and Tenma answered that they would find out the second they stepped inside. Yuna let out a heavy sigh, explaining that today they were entering an official D-class gate where the Roman Guild had submitted a formal raid application, meaning they were tagging along as association observers. Yuna looked over at him with a slight blush, but before she could finish her sentence, Tenma walked ahead. Yuna stomped her feet in annoyance, fuming about his cold attitude as she jogged to catch up with him. Across the green field near the gate, the Roman Guild raid party was waiting near the portal entrance, and a guild member noted that the association observers arrived right on time. Title cards introduced the key guild members: Mai Yumasaki, a D-class hunter holding a magic staff, and Taiga Sejima, the D-class guildmaster wearing heavy armor with 2 swords strapped to his back. Yuna walked up, introducing herself as an officer from the Hunter Association, and Mai offered a polite greeting. Mai pointed at Tenma, asking who the guy standing next to her was, and Yuna explained that he was her personal combat support in case anything went wrong inside the gate. Guildmaster Sejima stepped forward with crossed arms, coldly introducing himself before glaring down at them, barking at them to make their observation quick and get out. Sejima warned them in no uncertain terms that all magic beasts inside the gate belonged exclusively to the Roman Guild, ordering them not to dare interfere with their hunt. Tenma listened calmly, offering a simple agreement. Standing beside Yuna, our boy looked at the arrogant guild members, thinking in black thought bubbles that to these elitist hunters, an F-rank substitute like him did not even exist. He watched the Roman Guild squad march toward the portal, inwardly reflecting that under normal historical circumstances, every single member of this raid party would be brutally slaughtered by the demon race inside. Sejima glanced over his shoulder, noticing Tenma's intense stare, and asking sharply if he had something to say. Tenma twitched slightly, offering a deadpan denial. Sejima scoffed, telling them to just follow behind quietly. As the guild team stepped into the swirling purple portal, Yuna leaned into Tenma's ear, whispering that this hostility was why she hated guilds, complaining that raid guilds were always super toxic toward association observers. Tenma stopped outside the gate entrance, and Yuna raised her hand, telling him to wait a second so she could scan the gate's mana levels before entering. Yuna channeled her pink scanning magic into the portal entrance, carefully analyzing the energy readings. Close up on her eyes, she completed the scan and lowered her hand, turning to Tenma to report that there were 0 unusual mana spikes inside, asking if he was absolutely sure about his bad feeling. Tenma crossed his arms, offering a calm smirk as he stated that they would find out the truth soon enough. Yuna stared at his confident face in silence, before breaking into a warm, gentle smile, declaring that he really was an interesting guy, promising to play along with his hunch for now. Stepping through the portal into the gate interior, Yuna Shurigain gasped in awe, looking around at the glowing blue trees and the shimmering river under a giant full moon, commenting on how beautiful the landscape looked. Tenma Tsukashiro walked beside her, gripping the hilt of his sword while thinking in black bubbles that somewhere deep in this forest, right where the gate boss lurked, the demon of growth was waiting. Ahead of them, Guildmaster Taiga Sejima turned around with an arrogant scowl, calling out to tell them not to wander too far back because the guild could not afford any amateur accidents. Yuna put on a fake smile, sarcastically replying yeah, before inwardly roasting Sejima in black thought bubbles, complaining about a D-rank hunter having a terminal case of hunter disease for lecturing a C-rank officer. Up ahead, the Roman Guild members were laughing and chatting as they marched, but Tenma watched them silently, thinking that this cocky growth phase was the happiest time in a hunter's life. He noted that weaklings who just jumped from F-rank to D-rank always made the stupid mistake of thinking they could climb all the way to the top. Visuals depicted ranks ascending from F to D, D to C, and up a giant staircase toward S-rank where elite legends stood. Tenma reflected that while average hunters dream of reaching those heights, only true genetic anomalies ever make it to S-rank. Suddenly, a guild member screamed that monsters were approaching, and a pack of giant silver wolves charged out of the forest with glowing eyes and roaring fangs. Sejima drew his sword, shouting that 3 silver wolves were incoming and ordering everyone to get into formation. Mai Yumasaki raised her magic staff, casting a golden protective barrier spell called Shield that enveloped the entire vanguard party. At the same time, the Archer Guild member channeled blue magic circles, declaring that her magic arrows were ready to fire on command. Sejima charged forward with a roaring wolf aura manifesting behind his strike, while the Archer girl unleashed a massive volley of glowing blue magic arrows into the pack. Explosions burst across the wolves' faces, making the beasts whine in pain as they crashed onto the dirt. Sejima and his vanguard lunged in, thrusting their blades into the fallen wolves' necks, killing them instantly. Watching from the rear with folded arms, Tenma noted that the guild was actually performing pretty well, thinking that if this were a normal D-class gate, they would clear it without a single scratch. But his expression darkened as he noted that the true problem was the presence of the demon of growth. Suddenly dark demonic energy erupted from the corpses, and the slain silver wolves rose back up with glowing eyes and roaring jaws. Sejima panicked in shock as the revived wolves charged back in with dark aura surging around their fangs. Sejima screamed for everyone to fall back inside Mai's golden shield, but even when a vanguard member stabbed a wolf straight in its vitals, the demonic beast kept charging, completely unbothered by physical damage. The giant wolf jaws snapped down onto the golden barrier, cracking the magic shield under immense bite force. The archer girl fired another volley of magic arrows at point-blank range, but the blue spells dissipated uselessly against the dark aura, making her scream in terror that her magic was not working. With a loud shatter, the golden barrier exploded into fragments, and the demonic wolves swiped their massive paws, sending Sejima and his guild members flying through the air with screams of agony. Sejima crashed onto his back, desperately yelling at his panicked team to calm down and keep fighting. Watching the beatdown from the rear, Tenma explained in black thought bubbles that the demonic energy emitted by the demon race naturally spreads throughout the gate, mutating local monsters and making them insanely OP compared to their normal versions, which was why the demon race was so terrifying. Yuna turned to Tenma in panic, pointing out that the buffed wolves were way too strong for a D-rank party, asking if they should step in and help. Tenma looked over with a calm, cold face, stating that he was not sure they had the luxury of saving random weaklings. Our boy activated perception level 10, creating a glowing blue sensory bubble around himself and Yuna. Suddenly heavy footsteps shook the earth as another massive wave of demonic silver wolves charged out of the tree line straight toward them. A giant wolf leaped through the air with snapping jaws, but Tenma drew his Soul Eater sword with a crisp metallic slide, delivering a blinding blue upward slash that sliced the wolf cleanly in half. A system alert popped up, reminding him that because his level was locked at level 20, all earned experience points were being converted into system points instead. Tenma inspected his glowing blue blade with a smirk, noting that Soul Eater's attack power was even sharper than he expected. Before the blood could hit the ground, two more demonic wolves leaped out of the shadows, and Tenma readied his stance, shouting that it was his turn. But before he could swing, a flash of glowing orange chains shot through the air behind him, wrapping tightly around the jumping wolves and slamming them onto the dirt. Yuna held her hands up, maintaining the binding magic while yelling at Tenma to hurry up and finish them off. Tenma looked back in awe, acknowledging that between her teleportation and her binding magic, SSS rank hunter Yuki Shurigane's little sister was the real deal. Turning back to the trapped monsters, Tenma unleashed a maxed-out blue sword slash, cleanly dicing the bound wolves into pieces. As the severed wolf bodies fell, Yuna gasped in shock, declaring that his attack power was incredible. Glowing white soul essence began rising from the dead wolves, and a system window announced that Soul Eater was performing soul intake, absorbing the soul concentration up to 13%. Yuna looked over at the other side of the clearing, noting that the Roman guild was still getting brutally mauled. Sejima was on his knees, screaming desperately for Tenma and Yuna to get over there and help them. Tenma stood with folded arms, deadpan trash-talking the guildmaster by asking if Sejima had not explicitly ordered them not to interfere with his hunt. Sejima's face twisted in pure rage as he screamed back how Tenma could say something so petty at a time like this, right before a wolf claw swiped him across the field. The rest of the Roman guild was getting battered, screaming in agony as fire and dark energy exploded across their squad. Yuna asked again if they should help, but Tenma calmly suggested taking a quick breather before moving to the next zone. Over at the guild party, Sejima grunted on his knees, trying to rally his bruised team for another push. But the heavy-armored vanguard member snapped, shouting at Sejima, asking if he was seriously planning to keep clearing the gate when they could barely handle basic mobs. Mayu Masaki agreed, trembling as she clutched her staff. Sejima screamed back in panic, asking what was wrong with them, yelling that this was just a D-rank gate and that if they failed this raid, they would not have enough cash to upgrade their gear or pay off their massive guild debts. Tenma stood nearby watching the argument, reflecting in black thought bubbles that this was how a hunter's life usually went. Repeatedly farming gates like a video game numbed a person's survival instincts until they forgot the fundamental truth that gates were inherently lethal death traps. Yuna stepped forward, shouting at the Roman guild that it was way too dangerous to go any further because they were standing inside an irregular gate where the monsters were significantly buffed, urging them to fall back and request association backup. Sejima glared at her with pure spite, asking if she had any actual proof it was an irregular gate, scoffing that just because she worked for the association did not mean she could boss them around, declaring that the guild made the calls and telling her to stay out of it. Yuna went silent and Sejima scoffed as long as she understood her place. But Mayumasaki suddenly pointed a trembling finger into the dark tree line behind Sejima, her face pale with terror as she stuttered his name. Deep within the pitch-black shadows of the forest, two giant glowing red eyes burned through the dark as massive footsteps shook the earth. A colossal, terrifying demonic alpha wolf covered in surging red and black aura stepped into the moonlight, crushing severed wolf heads beneath its massive claws before letting out an earth-shattering roar. The raw shockwave of the monster's roar blew the entire Roman guild party backward through the air, sending them crashing onto the dirt with screams of pain. Sejima struggled on the ground, staring up in utter horror while asking what that monster was. Tenma dropped into a low combat stance, drawing his Soul Eater sword as his eyes narrowed with dark intensity, identifying the massive beast in black thought bubbles as the official gate boss. The colossal demonic alpha wolf roared overhead, its red aura engulfing the battlefield as Tenma stood alone between the giant boss and the fallen guild members, completely locked in for battle. Standing tall before the cowering guild members, the colossal demonic alpha wolf let out an earth-shattering roar that echoed across the entire gate zone. A blue system window instantly popped up, warning that the silver wolf boss was unleashing a special roar that inflicted the fear status effect, severely causing dizziness while crippling judgment and physical mobility. The Roman guild members clutched their heads in agonizing pain, screaming that their skulls felt like they were splitting open, while Guildmaster Taiga Sejima begged Yuna Shuriken to use her escape magic to pull them out. Yuna held her head in pain, crying out that she could not maintain her concentration for much longer under the boss's suffocating aura. But as the mental pressure washed over Tenma Tsukishiro, the system chimed, unlocking the skill willpower level 1. Within a fraction of a second, system notifications spammed willpower level 2 and level 3, increasing his mental status ailment resistance by 9 points and shaking off the fear status entirely. Our boy snapped his eyes open, completely unfazed by the roar, while Sejima grunted on the ground, struggling to crawl away and muttering that they needed to run. Mayumasaki reached out, grabbing Sejima's pant leg and crying for help, but the cowardly guildmaster kicked her hand away and fled, leaving his own teammate in the dirt. Tenma watched Sejima abandon his squad, calculating that if the guild ran now, they would get picked off without Yuna's teleportation support. Activating Intimidation Level 7, our hero's eyes flashed with crimson light, summoning a giant spectral red eye in the sky. The wave of pure terror hit Sejima mid-sprint, making the guildmaster scream as he tripped over his own boots and face-planted hard into the dirt. Yuna dropped to her knees, casting a glowing golden magic circle on the ground while shouting for everyone to gather around so she could teleport them to safety. The demonic alpha wolf charged toward the circle at top speed, and Sejima screamed her name in terror. Tenma sprinted through the field, scooping up Mayumasaki in his arms and stepping into the glowing circle just as the giant wolf's jaws snapped down on the empty air. A blinding flash of golden light engulfed the party, teleporting them onto a high grassy hill elsewhere in the gate. The Roman guild members collapsed onto the grass, gasping for air as Mai cheered that they were saved. The vanguard member urged everyone to move fast and exit the gate, but Yuna looked around in confusion, pointing out that her spell should have sent them straight to the exit portal, noting with horror that the exit was completely closed. Tenma stood up calmly, explaining that this was an irregular gate, meaning the exit portal would never open until the gate boss was slain. Sejima panicked on his knees, screaming how on earth they were supposed to kill a god-level monster like that. Without saying a word, Tenma drew his Soul Eater sword with a sharp metallic slide, assuring them not to worry because he would take it down himself. Sejima looked up in disbelief, but Mai suddenly pointed behind Tenma with a horrified gasp. The fallen wolf corpse on the hill began convulsing as thick black tar-like tentacles wrapped around its body, swallowing the beast whole. The black liquid erupted into a towering vortex of dark energy, forming a massive dark dome that blocked out the sky. Tenma watched calmly, noting in black thought bubbles that the dark magic had taken over the silver wolf boss's body. A mutated, hulking werewolf demon creature stepped out of the black tar, surging with terrifying dark power. Yuna panicked, asking if he was seriously planning to fight that monstrosity. Tenma turned to the group, casually announcing that he and Shuriken were going to defeat it. Yuna flustered in shock, while Sejima and his guild members yelled that sending just 2 people against that thing was literal suicide. Tenma looked down at Sejima, calling his name and bluntly asking to borrow his heavy armor. A system item card highlighted Sejima's gear as the practical metal armor set rare, offering plus 25 defense and a 5% damage reduction against beast-type monsters. A dark roar echoed through the forest, and Tenma and Yuna walked toward the boss area together. Yuna asked what that monster actually was, and Tenma answered that it was an entity that swallowed the boss and adapted its shape. Yuna asked if he had an actual plan, and our boy offered a deadpan smirk, stating that they would just overpower it with brute force. Yuna sweat dropped with a sarcastic smile, roasting his plan by stating it was perfect for getting them both killed. Tenma gripped Soul Eater, noting that the boss suddenly getting stronger was directly connected to the gate portal locking, meaning their objective remained unchanged. Suddenly 3 demonic wolves charged out of the bushes, screeching as they lunged. Tenma shouted that they just needed to beat them all down, launching forward and unleashing a massive blue sword arc that sliced all 3 wolves in half in a single flash. More wolves rushed out of the tree line toward Yuna, but she raised her palm, screaming thunderbolt as a massive bolt of golden lightning erupted from her hand, frying the wolf into ash. Tenma offered a polite smirk, complimenting her move, and Yuna winked playfully, boasting that she was up for a promotion to B rank soon. Tenma crossed the bloodied clearing, thinking in Black Thought Bubbles that while it was a shame he could not earn raw experience at level 20, wiping out these mobs was the perfect chance to stack system points. System alerts chimed as Soul Eater performed soul intake, swirling white soul streams flooding into his blade as the soul concentration hit 99%, then officially maxed out at 100%. The system chimed, announcing that Soul Eater's special function soul release was now unlocked, allowing him to clothe the blade in gathered monster souls to significantly boost his attack power and range for 5 seconds. Tenma looked at his sword blazing with brilliant blue spirit flames, smirking cockily as he noted that 5 seconds was more than enough. Yuna looked at the glowing blade in awe, commenting on its crazy aura. Suddenly a dark roar echoed across the mountains, and up on a high cliff under the full moon, the mutated demon of growth glared down at them. Surrounding silver wolves cowered in terror, and Yuna noted that the boss's howl was completely different and that the local mobs were on guard. Tenma's eyes narrowed, realizing that before the demon of growth could fully digest the silver wolf boss's power, now was their absolute best window to strike. Yuna demanded that he spill whatever secret info he was holding, stating that this monster was less like a beast and more like a walking natural disaster. Tenma revealed that a special entity called the Demon of Growth had taken over the silver wolf boss's body. Yuna asked what the demon race was, and Tenma explained that they were high-tier monsters that commanded dark demonic power. Right as he spoke, red system alert windows popped up in front of their faces, announcing that they had entered the domain of the demon follower, applying an absolute restriction within a 50-meter radius that prevented any creature from growing. Yuna and Tenma stared at the red screens in confusion, and Tenma stated he would explain quickly. In Black Thought Bubbles, our hero confirmed his theory, recalling flashback memories of terrifying demon commanders walking through flames. He reflected that every member of the demon race possessed an inherent domain that exerted absolute rules over anyone who stepped inside. Flashback visuals depicted a female demon commander sitting on a throne of corpses, while impaled human bodies lined the background. Tenma noted that the Demon of Growth's domain was growth restriction, meaning no creature inside its range could grow, boost their stats, or awaken new skills by any means. He noted that while the domain currently covered a 50-meter radius, it would eventually expand to swallow entire cities. Yuna panicked, shouting that the boss had spotted them, as the Demon of Growth glared down from the cliff with glowing red eyes. A red exclamation mark flashed above their heads, and boom. The Demon of Growth leaped off the cliff, crashing onto the ground right in front of them with earth-shattering force. Tenma grabbed Yuna, pulling her back as shockwaves tore up the terrain. As the dust cleared, the dark shape transformed, revealing a pale, purple-haired female elf demon floating in midair where the wolf boss stood. Yuna gasped in shock at her humanoid form, and Tenma noted that just like the silver wolf, the demon was displaying a form it had absorbed in the past. The elf demon raised her palm, channeling dark purple magic as 8 massive, pulsating dark orb spheres encircled her floating body, connected by dark chains. The immense pressure cracked the earth beneath them, and Tenma looked at the floating spell in total shock, realizing the Demon of Growth he knew in the future did not possess this magic, concluding that it had stolen the spell from an ancient elf hero. As the 8 dark energy orbs swirled around the floating demon like a lethal solar system, Yuna screamed in pure panic for them to dodge. Surrounded by 8 giant, pulsating purple magic orbs, the floating elf demon hovered in the night sky, preparing to obliterate everything below. Yuna Shurigain shouted at the top of her lungs, telling Tenma Tsukashiro to dodge on her exact signal. Our hero's eye flashed with a glowing aura as the blue system window confirmed the activation of perception level 10, allowing his hyperware vision to process the spell's trajectory in real time. Floating above, the elf demon channeled dark purple energy into the floating orbs before opening her hand to unleash the barrage. The instant her fingers twitched, Tenma screamed now at the top of his lungs. 8 massive, destruction-tier purple beams shot down from the sky, slamming into the earth and tearing up the ground with explosive shockwaves. Tenma rocketed through the raining artillery at blinding speed, weaving through the exploding craters as system notifications spammed his interface, confirming the simultaneous activation of Agility Level 10, Footwork Level 10, and Taijutsu Level 10. Our boy executed flawless acrobatic flips midair, dodging through the barrage of purple energy before landing smoothly on the dirt, sliding back on his boots as the smoke cleared. Catching his breath, he reflected in black thought bubbles that even with 4 maxed-out movement skills active at once, he barely managed to dodge the attack. He checked his smoking sleeve, realizing that without the metal armor he borrowed from Sejima, he would have been blown to pieces, acknowledging that the raw power of the demon race was way beyond imagination. He glared up sharply, telling himself he needed to strike back before the demon launched her next round. Floating up in the air, the elf demon giggled playfully, covering her mouth with her hand as a single dark purple orb orbited her fingertip. Tenma sprinted across the clearing with Soul Eater drawn, but the demon simply hovered in midair, raising a giant purple orb to block his path. Tenma screamed Shirogane-san, roaring now at the top of his voice. Yuna slammed her hands onto the ground, summoning glowing golden-pink magic chains that burst out of the earth, wrapping tightly around the elf demon's wrists and ankles to lock her in place. Yuna screamed now with her hands raised, and Tenma leaped into the air toward the bound demon, channeling his sword style for the Kirishima-style straight-line slash. He brought Soul Eater down with all his physical strength, unleashing a vertical beam of brilliant blue sword aura that cut straight through the floating elf demon. The blue slash cleanly bisected the demon, blowing dark tar and black aura apart as Tenma landed in a cool 3-point crouch, inwardly cheering that his strike landed. But low, guttural growls suddenly echoed behind him, making our guy turn around in surprise. The severed black tar melted back together, and the colossal demonic alpha wolf emerged completely unharmed, letting out a deafening roar. Tenma panted heavily, realizing the demon had instantly transformed back into the giant silver wolf boss to minimize the slash damage, while simultaneously flexing its brute strength to shatter Yuna's binding chains into pieces. The giant wolf stepped forward, crushing the broken magic chains under its massive paws. Yuna screamed "watch out" in pure panic as the giant wolf opened its jaws, gathering a massive ball of dark purple energy in its throat. Tenma's eyes widened in shock as the wolf unleashed 8 rapid purple energy beams directly at him. Explosions blasted across the terrain as Tenma tumbled back across the dirt, blocking the shockwaves with his blade. He realized in black thought bubbles that the boss was combining the silver wolf's raw physical stats with the elf's high-tier magic, calling the hybrid combination totally insane. The giant wolf charged another massive purple orb in its mouth, aiming directly at him, and boom, the dark projectile exploded across the ground, making Tenma grunt as he blocked the blast. As the smoke cleared, Yuna raised her hands, casting a golden teleportation circle on the dirt. Tenma dashed toward her, shouting straight-line slash as he sliced through another charging wolf mob to clear a path, sending the beast screaming across the dirt. High above them, the giant wolf boss charged a giant purple orb in its mouth, and Tenma looked up in shock, diving out of the way just as the blast smashed into the ground, tearing up the landscape with black energy slashes. Tenma slid across the dirt, realizing in black thought bubbles that if this turned into a long drag-out fight of attrition, they were at a total disadvantage. He looked over at Yuna, who was shielding herself behind a rock as dark energy exploded around her, sweating profusely while gasping that her mana was almost at its absolute limit. Tenma landed near a puddle of black tar bubbling on the ground, his sharp eyes noticing a critical detail. He realized that the pieces of the demon of growth blown off by his straight-line slash could not merge back into the main body, proving that his maxed-out slashes were actually inflicting permanent damage. He declared that all he needed now was one decisive blow. Our boy rocketed forward as the giant wolf boss lunged at him, sliding cleanly between the monster's legs to come up right behind it. Tenma delivered a swift blue slash across the wolf's hind leg, making the beast roar in pain. But when the wolf swung its massive claw down in retaliation, Tenma dodged the strike by a single inch. Sliding back onto his feet, Tenma remembered that he possessed one final trump card, the special function of his Soul Eater blade. System prompts flashed, confirming that Soul Eater Soul Release was available, clothing the blade in gathered monster souls to massively boost his attack power and range for 5 seconds. Tenma noted that 5 seconds was a razor-thin window, but it was all he had. Across the clearing, the giant wolf boss began charging another purple energy orb in its throat. Tenma turned toward Yuna, screaming her name at the top of his lungs before sprinting straight toward her through the smoke. Yuna turned around in panic, waving her arms and yelling while he was running toward her. Without stopping, Tenma scooped Yuna up into his arm, carrying her bridal style as he sprinted across the battlefield. Yuna screamed in total shock, but Tenma ignored her dramatic yelling, asking while running if she had enough mana left to cast teleportation right above the boss's head. Yuna replied that with her remaining mana she only had one shot left, and Tenma looked her in the eye, shouting that one shot was more than enough. Tenma leaped into the air with Yuna in his arm, and Yuna screamed asking if he was an idiot, before frantically channeling her final teleportation spell. A flash of purple light surged, tearing open a dimensional rift in the sky directly above the giant wolf boss. Whoosh! Tenma and Yuna emerged out of the rift in midair, falling straight down toward the wolf's head from above. Yuna held onto Tenma tightly, screaming in terror, but Tenma looked down with cold, lethal focus. The system interface chimed, confirming the activation of Soul Eater Soul Release, significantly boosting his attack range and power for 5 seconds. Brilliant blue spirit flames erupted around Soul Eater, completely engulfing Tenma and his blade in a massive storm of souls, while the spectral image of Sword Saint Teiyo Kirishima manifested right behind his strike. Tenma raised Soul Eater high above his head with both hands, aiming straight down at the giant wolf boss charging its purple orb below. System title cards highlighted the combination: Soul Eater Supersized Straight Line Slash. Tenma brought the soul-infused blade down in a colossal, heaven-splitting vertical slash. Boom! A giant pillar of blue spirit light cut straight through the sky and earth, bisecting the entire cavern landscape and tearing open a massive explosion of light. The colossal beam of the supersized straight line slash cut straight down from the sky, splitting the cavern and the earth in a blinding explosion of spirit light. As the blinding glare slowly faded, a blue system interface officially popped up, announcing that the demon race had been defeated. Thick black smoke rose into the dark night sky, and Yuna Shurigain lay flat on her back on the bloodied ground, panting heavily as she stared up, inwardly wondering who on earth this guy really was. She looked over at Tenma Tsukashiro lying nearby in the dirt, thinking in black bubbles that he was always just a weak F-rank nobody, wondering why he had been hiding such godlike strength all this time. Right at that moment, a glowing blue system notification chimed above Tenma, announcing that his awakening quest was officially cleared and that he had awakened as a D-rank hunter. Tenma looked up at the sky with a soft smile, reflecting in black thought bubbles that he had finally reached D-rank, achieving a rank he could never attain in his entire previous life. Yuna stood over him, telling him to get up because they did not have time to lie around like lazy corpses. Tenma groaned from the dirt, weakly claiming he did not think he could move a muscle for a while, but Yuna looked down at him with a serious face, stating that they needed to move immediately or they were going to be in deep trouble. Suddenly, a heavy thudding noise shook the ground, and a massive pack of silver wolves with glowing red eyes came sprinting out of the tree line. Tenma looked over at Yuna, lazily pleading for her to just hold off 50 monsters for 5 minutes so he could rest. Yuna let out an annoyed sigh, muttering G's under her breath while pulling out a glowing golden potion bottle. The system interface highlighted the item as a mana recovery intermediate potion, and Yuna chugged the liquid in one gulp, causing a massive aura of golden flame to erupt around her body as her mana fully restored. Yuna looked down at Tenma with a smug smirk, warning him that he was definitely buying her dinner after this, and that it was going to be the most expensive item on the entire menu. Tenma lay on the grass with a relaxed smile, noting that even just 1 minute of cover was more than enough. In a magnificent display of power, golden fire and lightning magic exploded across the forest, as Yuna single-handedly obliterated the entire silver wolf pack. Tenma looked up, starting to say Miss Shira, but a massive pillar of golden flame lit up the entire horizon. Sometime later, the orange glow of sunset washed over the city park, as a blue system prompt announced that all silver wolves had been defeated, and the irregular gate was successfully cleared. Mayu Masaki cheered with open arms, screaming in pure joy that they were saved. Outside the gate portal, the Roman Guild members and Yuna were sitting on the grass, and Mai hugged her teammate while crying that she thought she was going to die. Yuna walked across the field, smiling as she carried Tenma by letting him lean his arm over her shoulder. Yuna grinned, reminding him not to forget his promise to buy her the most expensive dinner in town. Tenma's sweat dropped with a deadpan face, marveling in black thought bubbles at the fact that she had just casually driven off 50 silver wolves by herself. Our boy caught his breath, softly telling her that he was fine now and could walk on his own from here. Tenma unequipped the battered metal armor he had borrowed from Sejima, dropping it onto the grass and thanking him for the help. Sejima collapsed into a crying chibai pile on the ground, weeping over his wrecked armor set. Mayu Masaki bowed deeply to Tenma and Yuna, offering her sincere gratitude and thanking them both for saving their lives. Yuna told Mai that the association would contact the guild later for an official briefing, asking Mai to make sure she covered for her on the report. Mai nodded, smiling, agreeing right away before politely asking if they could at least get the male hero's name. Tenma turned around with a polite, innocent smile, throwing out a completely fake alias, claiming his name was Takeru Guriki. Mai bowed deeply again, shouting her thanks to Mr. Guriki and swearing she would never forget his heroism as long as she lived. Yuna looked at Tenma in utter confusion, whispering into his ear to ask if Guriki was his real name, jokingly asking if he was a wanted criminal hiding from the law. Tenma reflected in black thought bubbles, realizing it was not like he wanted to hide his identity. A fantasy visual flashed in his mind, depicting Tenma standing in high-tier golden paladin armor under bright spotlights, as he thought that getting recognized for his potential and having a major guild back him would be great. However, he acknowledged that his growth rate was way too fast, realizing that the exact second he ended up on the blacklist of the demon race hiding in human society, it would be instant game over. He knew he could not afford to stand out until he was strong enough to protect himself from their assassin network. Back in reality, Yuna asked if he wanted her to fudge her official association report as well, and Tenma looked at her in silence before offering a gentle, charming smile, stating that fudging the report would be a huge help. Yuna's face instantly flushed bright red, steam blowing from her ears as her heart skipped a beat. Turning away in total embarrassment, Yuna stuttered that he better contact her later and not dare forget his promise to buy her dinner. Tenma smiled, agreeing softly. As Yuna walked away, Tenma called out to her again, saying Miss Shurigain. Yuna froze, her heart going thud as she turned around while nervously smoothing her hair, blushing as she asked what he wanted. Tenma looked at her with a casual smile, asking if she could use her teleportation magic to drop him off at Yongsan since he looked like a mess. Yuna stared at him with completely dead, unamused eyes and a twitching vein, before a flash of blue teleportation magic zapped Tenma away into the sky, leaving a Chibai Tenma sweat-dropping in shock. The scene shifted to the next morning under a sunny sky, where Tenma woke up in his apartment bed, stretching his arms as system notifications confirmed the activation of Natural Recovery Level 10. Our hero smiled peacefully, noting in black thought bubbles that his passive recovery was a total cheat code. A system window reported that his natural recovery skill gained a massive amount of experience, sitting at 35% mastery. Tenma noted that gaining 35% skill experience just from a single night of sleep was insane, reflecting that he had officially slain a member of the demon race, reached D rank, and raised his skill cap beyond level 10. He cheered in his head, shouting long live talentless adjustment limit break. Suddenly his smartphone vibrated on the bed sheets, and Tenma picked it up, seeing a missed call screen showing 4 missed calls from Hiroki Gondo at 10:32 a.m. Tenma noted that Gondo was the sleazy agency team leader he used to work for, thinking that he had zero intention of acting as a substitute filler member ever again. He pulled up his blue inventory screen, retrieving a giant, glowing golden red crystal. A system item tag identified it as a high-purity monocrystal D++. Tenma held the radiant gem, noting that even though it came from a D-rank dungeon, its purity was exceptionally high, calculating that it would easily fetch 500,000 yen on the market. Right at that moment, a glowing blue system window chimed, officially announcing the completion of his F-class limit break quest for subjugating the demon race, unlocking the causality reversal shop. Tenma smiled brightly, opening the new shop interface. The causality reversal shop displayed 3 rules. First, level-capped experience converts into points. Second, earned points can be spent on shop items. And third, returns are not accepted. The interface showed a balance of 500 points, with only the consumables shop unlocked. Tenma inspected the available inventory, seeing 2 items listed: a treasure acquisition potion normal for 500 points and a talent acquisition potion normal for 1,000 points. Reasoning that the system had never given him a useless item, Tenma decided to spend his 500 points to purchase the treasure acquisition potion. A glowing blue potion bottle materialized into his hand, and an item description revealed that the potion reversed causality to highlight the route to valuable treasure for 1 hour. Tenma noted that money was a crucial weapon for clearing gates, sitting up in bed and deciding there was no harm in drinking it. He uncapped the bottle and chugged the glowing blue liquid in one gulp, but after setting the empty bottle down, he noted that nothing felt different. Suddenly, a brilliant blue flame containing a white yen currency symbol ignited out of thin air right in front of his eyes. Tenma's eyes snapped open in surprise as the floating blue yen flame drifted through the air, zapping straight onto his smartphone sitting on the bed. Tenma looked in confusion as the flame sank into the screen, hovering directly beside Hiroki Gondo's missed call notification. Tenma sat up, realizing the potion was actively telling him to call the agency boss back. Dialing the number, Tenma held the phone to his ear, and Hiroki Gondo instantly exploded over the speaker, screaming at the top of his lungs, calling him a filler member and asking why the hell he was calling back now, yelling that if Tenma did not want to die, he better get his ass over to the office right now. Hearing the sleazy boss scream, a dark, predatory smirk spread across Tenma's face, as he realized the treasure acquisition potion was pointing him straight toward his next massive cash payout. Tenma stood up from his bed in casual clothes, stepping forward with a confident smile as he told Gondo to wait right there. Following the floating blue yen flame through the city streets, Tenma Tsukashiro arrived outside a brick commercial building featuring a large sign that read Number 1 Print Shop. He walked down the dark hallway, guided by the swirling blue flame until it stopped directly outside an office door. A system notification confirmed that his treasure acquisition potion was active, making our boy wonder in black thought bubbles if actual treasure was hidden inside a sketchy agency office. He pushed the door open, but the second he stepped inside, Hiroki Gondo, the agency boss, exploded in pure rage from behind his desk. Gondo screamed at the top of his lungs, calling Tenma a useless filler member, screaming how dare he ignore his calls and blaming our hero for making them lose a massive client deal. Gondo turned to his two hulking henchmen, ordering them to give Tenma a little physical re-education to teach him his place. Tenma looked at Gondo calmly, noting in black thought bubbles that the agency boss was just a normal civilian. Looking at the two massive thugs blocking his path, our hero reflected that the only reason Gondo was ever able to boss him around in his past life was because of these two hired goons. The system interface chimed, activating Memory Search Level 10 to instantly pull up their profiles. Memory film reels flashed in his mind, depicting past memories of these two thugs beating Tenma up in dark alleys, while system title cards identified them as D-Rank Hunter Teiji Kumikawa and D-Rank Hunter Masato Kaido. The first thug, Masato Kaido, stepped forward and grabbed Tenma aggressively by his collar, shoving him while asking what he was glaring at, asking if he ate something weird. Gondo screamed from his desk, telling his thugs to teach the kid a lesson. Tenma looked at the thug holding his collar with a deadpan face, thinking in black thought bubbles that these fools still had zero clue what was happening, noting that even compared to average D-Rank hunters, his current combat stats were on a completely different level. He reflected that low-tier D-Rank hunters stuck at the bottom usually possessed common skills, capped at level 5 at best. System alerts flashed as Tenma activated Strength Level 10, grabbing the thug's wrist with a crushing grip. With a sudden burst of power, our boy twisted Kaido's arm, executing a flawless taijutsu shoulder throw that launched the massive D-Rank thug through the air. The giant thug slammed face-first into the office bookcase, knocking books everywhere as Gondo and the second thug stared in utter shock. The second thug, Teiji Kumikawa, lost his cool, roaring as he reared his massive fist back to throw a heavy punch toward Tenma's face. System prompts flashed as Tenma activated Perception Level 10, slowing time to a crawl as he effortlessly dodged the incoming fist, before activating Taijutsu Level 10 to deliver an explosive palm strike straight into Kumikawa's chest. Boom! The second thug was launched backward, crashing headfirst onto the office floor. Gondo slammed his hands on his desk in pure panic, screaming at Kumikawa to get up and do his job properly. Kumikawa's shirt ripped apart from his bulging muscles as he surged with dark aura, triggering his skillful body strength amplification level 5 and charging toward Tenma like a maddened bull. Tenma did not even bother drawing his sword, stepping into the charge and delivering a brutal, lightning-fast right hook straight to Kumikawa's jaw. The sheer impact sent the giant thug spinning through the air, crashing directly into Gondo's desk. Boom! Both Kumikawa and Gondo were wiped out together, slamming into the back wall and collapsing under broken office chairs. Gondo groaned in total agony, weakly threatening that he was going to end Tenma's hunter career forever. Tenma stepped forward, his dark shadow looming over Gondo as he calmly asked what he just said. Gondo squeaked in pure terror, scrambling backward on his hands and knees. Gondo stammered, asking if Tenma really thought he could get away with this, warning him that the hunter industry was super small. Tenma offered a cold, predatory smirk, stepping up onto the desk right above Gondo's face, deadpan asking and what. A moment later, the scene shifted to the office floor, where all three agency goons and Gondo were kneeling on their knees in their underwear, bowing their heads in complete humiliation while crying tears of regret, begging for forgiveness for everything they had done. Tenma stood over them, calmly pointing out that deducting the taxi fare from his daily pay was a bit much. Gondo trembled in utter terror, screaming an apology and promising to cover all of Tenma's travel expenses from now on. Tenma turned away, thinking in black thought bubbles whether there was any actual treasure to steal in this garbage office. Turning around, he noticed the floating blue yen flame hovering directly in front of a bookshelf. Tenma realized the potion was pointing toward the bookshelf, sliding a stack of books aside to reveal a heavy digital wall safe hidden behind them. Tenma stood before the safe, confirming that this was the target. Gondo stammered from the floor, asking what Tenma was doing, before shivering in terror as Tenma glared back. Gondo tried to brag from the ground, claiming that the wall safe had a 20-digit multi-layered password that no skill in the world could ever bypass. But the floating blue yen flame hovered right over the keypad, automatically inputting the full 20-digit code on the digital screen in a second. The system text confirmed that the password was completely bypassed, leaving Tenma amazed. Tenma reached out, typing the 20-digit sequence into the keypad himself. The heavy safe door popped open. Inside the safe, glowing beside stacks of illegal documents, was a golden key embedded with a blue mana crystal. Gondo's eyes widened in utter horror, asking how on earth he opened it. Tenma pulled out a thick stack of ledger papers, noting in black thought bubbles that these were records of all their illegal agency profits. A blue system prompt identified the key as a mana crystal-embedded key, capable of unlocking chest boxes of C rank or lower. Tenma held the golden key, calculating that selling it outright would fetch at least 1,000,000 yen, though he joked in his head whether stealing from crooks counted as straight-up robbery. Flipping through the document ledgers, his eyes locked onto a specific report as the blue yen flame hovered over the text. The document was titled Yokohama Dungeon Investigation Report, listing a rank D+ gate with an extremely high probability of containing massive mana crystals, kept hidden from the association at a private client's request, noting that a powerful mental barrier at the entrance required C++ mental resistance. Tenma's eyes widened in realization, thinking in black bubbles that he knew this specific dungeon, realizing that if he cleared it, he would hit the ultimate jackpot. Gondo begged on his knees, wringing his hands as he cried that they spent a fortune preparing to clear that private gate, pleading that D-rank hunters could not even enter the mental barrier. Tenma looked over his shoulder with a confident smirk, stating that he would be the judge of that. Suddenly the office door clicked open, and a tall, stylish man wearing glasses and a white trench coat stepped into the room, saying "oh" in surprise, commenting that he did not expect to find someone inside already. The white-coated man walked into the office, and Tenma turned his head, his eyes widening in shock as he recognized the intruder. The white-coated man looked at Tenma with sharp eyes, asking if Tenma knew who he was. Tenma recognized him instantly in black thought bubbles as Kyosuke Sengoku, reflecting that in the ruined future timeline, there was not a single soul who did not know his legendary name. The white-coated man smiled softly, addressing Tenma directly by his full name, calling him the talentless F-rank hunter Tenma Tsukashiro. Sengoku stepped forward, mentioning that people in the industry called him the filler, before looking at the blue yen flame floating over the open safe. Tenma held up the Yokohama dungeon document, asking casually if this report was what Sengoku was looking for. Sengoku took the document with a delighted smile, asking how Tenma knew what he wanted. Gondo dived from the floor, screaming for Sengoku not to take it, but Sengoku looked down in disgust, delivering a brutal, swift kick straight into Gondo's face, sending the agency boss crashing face first into the floor with a scream. Sengoku inspected the document, thanking Tenma for his cooperation and asking why Gondo lied about having the report. Sengoku handed Tenma a sleek, high-end business card, telling our boy that he would like to thank him properly next time, inviting Tenma to call his personal number in a week. Tenma looked at the card in shock, realizing he was holding Kyosuke Sengoku's official business card. System narration highlighted Sengoku's true identity as an S-rank hunter, and the leader of the world's greatest intelligence network in the future timeline. A visual depicted Sengoku sitting in his high-tech command room, as narration text described him as a hero and a monster who used his intelligence network to foresee the demon race's invasion before anyone else. Back in the present, Sengoku walked toward the exit door, stopping at the threshold to look back over his shoulder at Tenma with an intrigued smile, thinking to himself that Tsukashiro was a truly fascinating man for managing to fool even an S-rank intelligence master like him. Tenma turned around in surprise, and Sengoku pressed further, asking if Tenma really thought he would not notice his true power just because the Hunter Association officially covered up the incident, explicitly identifying our boy as the hero who single-handedly solved the Night Crow Guild crisis. Sengoku assured him that he had zero intention of blackmailing him, while a brief flashback depicted Tenma clashing violently against Ku Chulain inside the B-class gate. Sengoku admitted he was simply curious why an F-rank substitute went out of his way to handle a world-ending threat, urging Tenma to tell him all about it the next time they met. Wishing him a casual goodbye, Sengoku vanished into a swirling cloud of white mist. Standing alone in the quiet office, Tenma looked down at the blue business card in his hand, thinking in black thought bubbles that snagging Sengoku's personal contact card was a stroke of absolute luck. The moment the thought crossed his mind, a blue system interface chimed above his head, announcing that he had officially acquired the skill Luck Level 1. A detailed skill window explained that Luck Level 1 increased his overall chance of gaining good fortune, while passively improving his daily luck stat. Tenma smiled softly, realizing that with an S-rank intelligence mogul in his corner, making a fortune was only a matter of time, noting that gathering intel on the demon race would be exponentially easier. Right then, a system notification chimed, confirming that the effects of his treasure acquisition potion had officially expired, and the blue yen flame dissipated into thin air. Tenma checked his causality reversal shop tab, seeing his point balance sit at 0 points, but noted that he still had the talent acquisition potion listed in the shop. He knew he needed to farm system points to purchase it, realizing that his immediate next step was to go out and level up. Flipping through the stolen Yokohama report, our hero grinned, noting that thanks to Gondo's illegal office, he had officially secured a solid source of funds to gear up. The scene shifted to the Yongsan shopping district, where Tenma was strolling through a massive covered commercial arcade in casual clothes. He walked into a high-end hunter supply store, showing his smartphone screen to a female shopkeeper in sleek armor, and asking to see the items listed on his note. The shopkeeper agreed enthusiastically, telling him to wait a moment while she fetched his order. A few minutes later, Tenma walked out into the shopping district, carrying a massive mountain of gear strapped to his back. System price tags highlighted his new gear: a hunter's backpack for 145,000 yen, a hunter's shovel for 150,000 yen, and a hunter's pickaxe for 200,000 yen. Tenma broke into a comically painful sweat, complaining in black thought bubbles that he had literally just made that cash and had already burned through nearly 500,000 yen. Still, he acknowledged that this heavy gear was essential for clearing the secret Yokohama dungeon. Checking his phone app, his heart sank as he stared at his remaining bank balance of 7,842 yen. Crying funny anime tears with a forced smile, our boy reassured himself that spending all his money on gear was just a necessary business investment, declaring that it was time to go out and earn it all back. The scene shifted to the mountains of Yokohama under a glowing orange sunset sky, where Tenma was forcefully swinging his new pickaxe against a rocky cliffside, shattering boulders with loud clangs. Catching his breath with a heavy phew, the collapsed rock face caved in, revealing a massive, ancient stone archway entrance hidden deep within the mountain cliffside. Strap-in backpack firmly secured, Tenma walked down a grand, illuminated stone staircase lined with glowing blue runes that led deep beneath the earth. He reflected in black thought bubbles that, according to the stolen report, the dungeon entrance was guarded by an intense mental barrier instead of physical monsters, confirming that someone was actively blocking public access to the inner chambers. At the bottom of the long staircase, a giant, pulsating purple sphere of dense mental magic blocked the stone doorway. Tenma stopped before the swirling barrier, noting that if a normal hunter tried to force their way through a mental wall of this level, they would instantly lose their mind or end up a total brain-dead vegetable. Taking a deep breath, our hero stepped directly into the dark purple barrier. The second his boots crossed the threshold, violent waves of pink and purple psychic energy washed over his brain, making him groan in physical agony while clutching his head. A blue system alert flashed, confirming the activation of willpower level 3 to resist the mental assault. Tenma grit his teeth through the mental noise, telling himself not to let the illusion get to him, knowing it was just psychic magic designed to manipulate his deepest emotional trauma. Dark red hostile thought bubbles swirled around him in the purple void, echoing the cruel insults of his past life as shadowy red-eyed specters mocked him, screaming that he was a trash hunter, telling him to stop showing off, calling him a dead weight, and barking at him to stay out of the way because an F-rank fraud was completely useless. Tenma grimaced in pain, holding his head tightly as the negative emotions from before his regression washed over him like a wave, making him feel like he was trapped back in his darkest, most pathetic days. Ghostly voices screamed that he was an FFF-class trash hunter, shouting that they would rather take a goblin on a raid than him. Tenma grit his teeth, remembering how he had tasted that awful feeling of worthlessness for 20 straight years. But his eyes suddenly narrowed with intense resolve, telling himself that he was no longer the talentless weakling he used to be, forcing his mind to focus and take it one step at a time. The system interface chimed, activating willpower level 3, before rapidly spamming notifications that unlocked willpower level 4 and willpower level 5 in a fraction of a second. Reaching his hand out, Tenma touched the stone wall beyond the threshold, stumbling through the dark corridor while panting heavily. Catching his breath against the cold stone, he noted that if he did not possess a maxed-out willpower skill, he never would have made it through that first barrier. Walking deeper into the vast underground cathedral dungeon, surrounded by high Gothic archways and gargoyle statues, he spotted an even larger swirling vortex of dark purple mental magic blocking the inner throne chamber. Noting that there were still 0 monsters around, he pondered why a D-rank gate was packed with extreme mental barriers and no physical mobs. Activating Memory Search Level 10, memory film reels spun around him, digging into his photographic recall. He remembered that while the records claimed a top-tier C-rank hunter could approach the entrance, deep inside the dungeon lay a psychic barrier so dense that even an S-rank hunter could not easily breach it. He recalled that because of this absolute mental wall, this exact dungeon would eventually become the secret stronghold of an invincible demon race legion commander. A terrifying mental visual depicted a hulking, horned demon race legion commander standing on piles of slaughtered humans while holding 2 severed bodies in his bare hands. System narration highlighted legion commanders as godlike beings who possessed absolute power rivaling SSS rank hunters, pushing humanity to the absolute brink of despair. Tenma realized that beyond this second mental barrier lay the actual high-tier equipment used by a future legion commander. Grinning as he realized these items were the true jackpot the potion promised him. According to monthly hunter records, the corridor ahead was packed with lethal physical traps alongside psychic attacks. Tenma stepped into the deep purple barrier, and instantly mental needles and high-pitched sonic screeches blasted his brain, making him groan as he held his head. Traps triggered instantly, and a volley of sharp physical arrows shot out from the stone walls. System alerts flashed, activating Perception Level 10 and Agility Level 10, allowing Tenma to dive through the air, dodging the flying arrows with acrobatic flips. He noted that if he lacked either perception or willpower, he would have been paralyzed by the mind magic and impaled instantly. Closing his eyes, he focused entirely on his heightened hearing, deciding to dodge the instant he heard a trap trigger rather than waiting to see it. Trap arrows rained down from every angle, but Tenma executed blind backflips and sidesteps, dodging every single needle with surgical precision. System alerts spammed his interface, rapidly leveling willpower level 6, level 7, level 8, and level 9 as he flipped through the corridor. Suddenly, a massive rolling stone boulder trap dropped from the ceiling, crushing the hallway behind him as Tenma sprinted full force. The system spammed willpower level 10 and pushed straight into willpower level 11, as Tenma slid smoothly under falling stone debris to land cleanly on the other side. A golden system notification announced that his willpower skill had reached level 11, granting him a broken additional effect, Anti-Psycho Magic, rendering him completely immune to all negative effects from mental magic. Tenma stood up in awe, realizing he felt 0 mental pressure even under a direct psychic barrage. Walking through a thick cloud of purple mental mist that monthly hunter described as unbearable even for S-rank hunters, Tenma observed horrific mental illusions manifesting around him, showing past hunters crying on their knees, begging for death, and stabbing each other in madness. An illusion of a female elf warrior wept over a slaughtered comrade, but Tenma walked right past the horrific visions completely unfazed, noting that these were just phantoms born from the memories of dead raiders, protected by his level 11 anti-psycho magic. He stepped through the grand stone archway into a massive, purple-lit throne chamber, where a towering Death Knight boss clad in full plate armor stood holding a massive dark greatsword surging with demonic aura. Tenma drew his Soul Eater sword, but the second he gripped the hilt, brilliant blue lightning and aura erupted violently from the blade. A blue system item card popped up, updating his weapon info to Soul Eater infused with demonic energy super rare, boosting its base attack power to 30+3, while unlocking a new passive function, Demonic Energy Predation, which permanently increased the blade's attack power by 3 every time it absorbed demonic energy. Realizing this was a bonus trait granted from defeating the Demon of Growth, Tenma readied his stance, activating Swordsmanship level 10 as he rocketed forward to engage the boss in a sword fight. The Death Knight boss swung its giant dark greatsword down with crushing force, and Tenma blocked with Soul Eater, sending a massive explosion of sparks and dark aura rocking the chamber. Skidding back across the stone floor with buzzing wrists, Tenma realized he was barely dealing any scratch damage through the boss's heavy armor, noting that the Death Knight was utilizing sword chi infused with dense mana. Activating Endurance level 10, Tenma caught his balance, but suddenly shadow portals opened on the floor, and 2 fully armored undead knight minions rose from the darkness, drawing their swords to surround him. Tenma looked at the 3 boss-tier enemies, sweating slightly as he wondered if clearing a D+ dungeon at level 20 was mathematically possible. But right at that moment, his eyes widened with a sudden epiphany. Our boy realized that summoned minion mobs still granted full experience points upon death. Knowing that his recent D-rank promotion officially lifted his level 20 cap, Tenma realized that defeating these summoned knights would grant him massive experience points, which would be multiplied by his passive 100,000 times limit break trait. Electric blue aura flared violently around his blade as a dark, predatory smirk spread across Tenma's face, realizing he had just landed in the ultimate experience farming paradise. Standing in the center of the cathedral throne room with electric blue aura flaring around his Soul Eater sword, Tenma Tsukashiro faced down the towering Death Knight boss and its two summoned undead knights. A blue system window flashed above his head, confirming the activation of Intimidation Level 7. A giant spectral red eye opened in the air above our hero, releasing a crushing wave of dark red aura that slammed into the two summoned minions, freezing them dead in their tracks. Tenma charged forward, channeling Kirishima-style straight-line slash as his blue-glowing blade sliced through both undead knights simultaneously. The blue slash bisected the minions, reducing them to swirling black smoke that dissolved into the stone floor. System alerts chimed, confirming that due to his X-Class trait Talentless Adjustment Limit Break, all stat gains were multiplied by 1. 2, while his experience points gained were multiplied by a massive 100,000 times. A chaotic storm of blue level-up notifications flooded the chamber, rapidly leveling Tenma from level 21 through level 22, level 23, level 24, level 25, and straight up to level 30. Enveloped in brilliant blue lightning aura, Tenma gripped his sword, ready for the main event. Across the hall, the Dark Death Knight boss roared with dark purple aura, raising its giant dark greatsword into the air before leaping through the air to bring a crushing strike down onto Tenma. The Death Knight crashed down with immense shockwaves, but Tenma rocketed forward to counter, their blades colliding in a high-speed clash that sent sparks and dark aura exploding across the room. Both combatants skidded past each other at blinding speed, and system prompts flashed in mid-combat, confirming the simultaneous activation of Perception Level 10 and Taijutsu Level 10 to support his rapidly increasing physical abilities. Tenma executed an acrobatic mid-air flip, dodging the boss's heavy swing before bringing Soul Eater down in a blinding blue arc. Tenma's slash struck the Death Knight cleanly, and as he landed in a 3-point combat crouch, system notifications spammed level-up alerts, rapidly pushing his level through level 37, level 38, level 39, and capping at level 40 max. Tenma stood up with his sword buzzing with electric aura, looking at the boss and noting that it was no longer summoning any minions, stating that all that remained was the boss itself. The Death Knight's giant dark sword began disintegrating in dark purple flames, and Tenma kicked off the stone floor, charging in for the final kill. The Death Knight swung its dark blade, but Tenma smoothly ducked under the arc, drawing Soul Eater back before triggering straight-line slash level 10. Our boy thrust his sword forward with explosive speed, shooting a massive beam of blue sword energy straight through the Death Knight's chest. The blue straight-line slash completely obliterated the boss's torso, shattering its plate armor into pieces as the red eye in its helmet flickered out. With a final explosion of blue spirit light and black smoke, the Death Knight boss completely disintegrated, and a blue system notification announced that Soul Eater devoured the demonic energy, permanently increasing its attack power by 3. Catching his breath, Tenma looked at his glowing sword with a confident smile, marveling at the sheer broken power of high levels. System prompts chimed, confirming that because he reached the level 40 cap, his causality reversal shop trait converted all excess experience into 213 system points, bringing his total balance to 242 points. A golden system interface announced that the dungeon boss was officially defeated, and that clear rewards would now be distributed. A cute chibi visual of Tenma popped up holding a treasure chest, offering a quick system tip that unlike open gates, clear dungeons always rewarded raiders with a physical clear chest. Tenma held out his open palms as a brilliant, blinding golden light materialized out of thin air in front of his face. As the golden light condensed between his hands, a sleek, glowing silver ring materialized on his palm. Tenma caught the ring, looking at it with a slight sweat drop, while telling himself not to judge an item purely by its simple appearance. A system item card popped up, identifying the reward as Ring of Defense Unique, offering a base defense stat of +10 while noting that its core function was currently sealed. Tenma's eyes widened with excitement, realizing that this was a rare growth-type item that grew alongside the user by consuming experience points. He checked his main status screen, confirming he was 24 years old, level 40 locked, D-rank, possessed Talentless Adjustment X, and held 313 system points. The system interface chimed, announcing that because he reached the level 40 cap, a new limit break quest would now be issued, alongside a special reward item. Tapping the blue screen, Tenma read the details of his new D-rank limit break quest, which listed the objective: retrieve the source of demonic energy 0 out of 3. The clear rewards promised a 1.3x stat increase per level, designated skill max levels increased by 2, a new category unlocked in the causality reversal shop, and a brand new special effect unlocked for talentless adjustment. Tenma held his chin in deep thought, wondering if the system was actively reading his mind, noting that preventing the demon race invasion was the exact reason he regressed. A visual depicted the spatial barrier dividing the demon realm from the human world, as narration text explained that the reason the entire demon army had not invaded yet was because the environments between the two realms were vastly different. An overlay map of Japan highlighted red targets across major cities, describing Project Demonic Energy, a secret plot where holy artifacts compressed with highly concentrated demonic energy were hidden across the human world to alter the atmosphere. A flashback visual depicted a guillotine execution platform where a human traitor who colluded with the demons was being executed before a crowd. The traitor wept on the platform, confessing to the crowd that the demon race had been steadily preparing their invasion long before humans even noticed, weeping that Project Demonic Energy was designed to completely wipe out humanity. Back in the dungeon, Tenma smirked to himself, realizing that destroying these hidden sources of demonic energy was the ultimate strategy to stop the invasion at its roots. Tapping his interface, our boy prepared to claim his level 40 milestone reward, remembering that last time he received the Soul Eater blade. Radiant, blinding light erupted from the ceiling, and as Tenma caught the falling weapon, his eyes snapped open in complete surprise as he realized he was holding a massive, glowing blue trident spear. 1 week later, the scene shifted to a bright, sunny morning outside the massive Hunter Training Center dome facility. Tenma walked down the wide stone pathway in casual clothes, looking around at peaceful crowds and couples, reflecting in black thought bubbles that this was a peaceful sight he never got to see before his regression, swearing to himself that he would never lose this world again. He pulled out his smartphone as it vibrated, checking his chat app. His inbox was flooded with 99+ angry messages from Yuna Shurigane screaming about when he was going to buy her the expensive dinner he promised, alongside a single apologetic text from Hiroki Gondo. Tenma sweat dropped with a deadpan face, deciding to temporarily ignore his text messages. He looked up at the giant training center complex, noting that this was a world-famous facility visited by every elite top-tier hunter. He noted that in his past life he could never afford the expensive entrance fees, but now that he held plenty of funds, he decided to test his new stats. Suddenly, a loud screech of burning tires echoed down the street, and a sleek red sports car came skidding sideways across the pavement at top speed, drifting directly toward Tenma. Perception level 10 automatically activated, slowing time to a crawl as the red sports car drifted inches away from his jacket. Tenma executed an effortless sidestep, dodging the speeding vehicle with insane agility. Our hero sweat dropped, shouting angrily at the car to ask if the driver was trying to kill him. The red sports car door opened, and a driver wearing a dark hoodie stepped out into the sunlight. Tenma stood his ground, glaring at the intruder. Stepping out of the red sports car outside the Hunter Training Center, the hooded driver pulled off his hood with a bright grin, yelling "Master" at the top of his lungs, while marveling that he ran into Tenma Tsukishiro in a place like this. The enthusiastic driver was none other than Sword Saint Teiyo Kirishima, who proudly patted the hood of his sleek red sports car, bragging that he bought it using his massive new guild signing bonus, claiming that a true rising star had to drive a sports car. Tenma stood watching his self-proclaimed apprentice in total disbelief, flatly asking which guild Teiyo ended up joining. Teiyo proudly revealed that he joined the Shugo Guild, short for the Sword of the Guardian Guild. System banners displayed the flags of the nation's top 3 ruling guilds: Sword of the Guardian, Silver Wing Guild, and 5 stars. An epic visual depicted Teiyo Kirishima standing heroically in samurai robes, holding twin katanas in front of the Sword of the Guardian crest, as narration text explained that the Shugo Guild recognized his god-tier talent as the Sword Saint and offered him an astronomical signing bonus. Chibai Tenma facepalmed in black thought bubbles, realizing how the broke swordsman was suddenly flexing a luxury sports car, before pleading out loud for Teiyo to please stop calling him master. Teiyo flinched in surprise, asking why, and Tenma walked beside him, explaining that being called master by a legendary ranker was a massive emotional burden. Teiyo asked what he should call him instead, and Tenma scratched his head, mentally rejecting being called big bro or mister, telling Teiyo to just call him whatever he wanted. Tenma started walking toward the facility entrance, telling Teiyo he was going on ahead, but Teiyo panicked, sprinting after him and yelling for his master to wait up. Inside the luxurious Hunter Training Center lobby, a giant title card displayed the training room price list. A rank for 50,000 yen, AA rank for 80,000 yen, AA rank for 100,000 yen, S rank for 500,000 yen, SS rank for 700,000 yen, and SSS rank for a whopping 1 million yen. Chibai Tenma stared at the price board in complete horror, sweating profusely as he whined in his head about what a total ripoff it was, deciding he would just rent a basic A rank room. Tenma walked up to the front counter to place his order with the female receptionist, but Teo suddenly stepped up from behind, casually sliding an ultra-exclusive black gold VIP card across the desk. The receptionist's eyes widened in total shock, bowing deeply as she announced she would show them straight to the VIP training room. Teo walked ahead with the receptionist while Tenma followed behind, checking a price booklet, only for Chibai Tenma's jaw to drop to the floor as he read the VIP training room price tag of 3 million yen per session. Teo twirled his VIP card with a cocky wink over his shoulder, asking if his master wanted to join him, and Chibai Tenma offered a sweating, fake smile, agreeing that his disciple was clutch. Inside the massive, high-tech VIP training room, glowing holographic dragons and serpents glided across the ceiling space. Tenma stepped onto the private training floor holding his blue trident spear, rearing his arm back and throwing the weapon forward with explosive force. The trident spear smashed into a distant wall target, cracking the reinforced stone. Tenma held out his hand, calmly chanting retrieve and squelch. The blue spear dematerialized into light and instantly warped back into his grip. A system item card highlighted his new weapon as the Spear of Retrieval Unique, featuring 45 attack power, retrieval level 5, and penetration level 5. Tenma smiled, holding the spear while noting in black thought bubbles that the weapon automatically returned to his hand, whether he chanted retrieve or simply thought it in his head. Teo ran over in complete awe, complimenting the new weapon and asking what kind of skills Tenma could perform with it. Tenma looked at him, and a system notification flashed, revealing that his throwing level 11 skill increased his throwing damage, speed, and accuracy by 25%. Tenma nonchalantly explained to Teo that he simply threw the spear really hard. Our hero held the trident, reflecting in black bubbles that its instantaneous physical destruction power surpassed Soul Eater, making it a god-tier sub-weapon. High above them, holographic dragons roared, and Teo stared up at them with burning motivation, unsheathing his katanas and sprinting forward while screaming that he could not let his master outshine him. Teo leaped high into the air, executing a breathtaking dual-blade aerial slash that cleanly sliced a holographic dragon in half. Tenma looked up at Teo's masterclass form, acknowledging in black bubbles that as expected of the Sword Saint, he could never mimic that level of natural sword talent. Teo landed in a dual-blade stance but looked down at his weapons in frustration, muttering that his form was still off. Turning to Tenma, Teo begged his master to demonstrate the straight-line slash one more time. Tenma walked over with his spear, noting in his head that Teo had been practicing the move relentlessly, but it was still incomplete. Out loud, Tenma reminded him that just like Teo originally taught him, in addition to visualizing connecting heaven and earth, one simply had to keep swinging without overthinking. Teo looked confused, asking how one keeps swinging, and Tenma leaped into the air, swinging Soul Eater down in a single vertical motion while shouting like this. A massive beam of blue sword energy split the entire room, and system notifications chimed, confirming that his passive limit break trait granted him a massive experience boost, pushing his skill from straight line slash level 10 at 99% straight into straight line slash level 11 max cap. Teo gasped in utter shock, watching the colossal blue slash carve a trench through the reinforced VIP walls. Tenma lowered his blade, and Teo tackled him into an intense, weeping embrace, screaming that this was no longer a basic straight-line slash, dramatically naming it the Tsukashiro-style straight-line slash. Tenma yelled at him that it was nothing special, but Teo beamed with fanatic admiration, marveling at the concept of evolving a base skill. Suddenly, Tenma's smartphone vibrated in his jacket, displaying an incoming call from Kyosuke Sengoku. Tenma pushed Teo off, thanking him for letting him use the VIP room and explaining that something urgent came up, so he was heading out first. Tenma walked out the sliding door, leaving Teo kneeling on the floor, clenching his fist with burning resolve as he declared in his head that he would definitely reach the Tsukashiro-style level one day. Later that afternoon, the scene shifted to an upscale outdoor cafe terrace called Everyday Day Story Soup, where S-rank hunter Kyosuke Sengoku sat in his white trench coat, sipping an iced coffee across from Tenma. Sengoku offered his polite thanks for Tenma's help with the Gondo matter, stating that while he could not disclose confidential details, Tenma's intel completely transformed his Information Guild standing, calling it heaven's luck. Sengoku set his glass down, stating that he made it an absolute rule to return favors because he hated being indebted to anyone. Tenma stared at him, reflecting in black thought bubbles that in his past timeline, Sengoku was known as the supreme information broker of the ruined world. A flashback depicted the apocalyptic future, where Sengoku stood among destroyed skyscrapers, coldly telling past Tenma that while he was on humanity's side, he was no philanthropist, warning that if Tenma wanted to survive, he needed to bring him valuable information or abilities. Present Tenma noted that Sengoku was a man who operated purely on cold, ruthless calculation, realizing that in this new timeline, our boy possessed the exact information Sengoku needed. Tenma set a large white duffel bag onto the cafe table, with a heavy thud reminding Sengoku that he always returned his favors. Sengoku raised an eyebrow, asking what was inside the bag, and Tenma unzipped it, revealing a massive glowing mountain of high-purity D++ mana crystals harvested from Gondo's secret dungeon. Sengoku looked into the bag in awe as Tenma proposed a permanent trading deal, offering to supply him with massive stashes of unregistered mana crystals continuously. Tenma noted in black thought bubbles that trading illegal crystals usually required guild-level trust, but knowing Sengoku's greedy calculation, money was all that mattered. Sengoku smiled sharply, agreeing to the deal and promising to cooperate. Chibai Tenma smirked in his head, noting that his treasure acquisition potion was working absolute wonders. Sliding a folded piece of paper across the table, Tenma added that he had one more request. Sengoku picked up the paper, unfolding it and reading a detailed list of names, locations, and rare item names. Tenma explained in black bubbles that while he had a general idea of where the hidden sources of demonic energy were located, he lacked the exact real-world coordinates, stating out loud that Sengoku's intelligence network had the resources to locate them for him. Sengoku looked at the paper, pondering that while he would love to help, this investigation seemed like it was going to be on a much larger scale than expected. Sengoku leaned forward, asking if Tenma could lend him a hand in return, and Tenma smoothly agreed. Sengoku checked his tablet, addressing our hero as D-class mercenary Tenma Tsukashiro. Tenma twitched in surprise, asking in his head how Sengoku knew he was D-class already. Sengoku explained that his agency was preparing to clear a special private dungeon, but because the gate possessed an absolute entry restriction of D-class or lower, they urgently needed a mercenary with Tenma's specific combat skills. Tenma's heart thumped, realizing that this secret dungeon was the ultimate reason Sengoku established contact with him. Sengoku showed his tablet screen to Tenma, displaying a glowing image of a multifaceted diamond, stating that he needed Tenma to retrieve an artifact called the Jewel of Aldoria. Tenma stared at the diamond image, feeling like he had heard that artifact name somewhere in his past life. Tenma asked if he was the only mercenary participating in the raid, and Sengoku answered that he had recruited other D-class hunters with exceptional talent, asking if Tenma would like to meet them. A moment later, the scene shifted to a sunny green mountain forest, where Tenma walked into a clearing, waving a polite greeting to two tough-looking hunters waiting near the trees. Tenma inspected the two recruits, questioning in his head if these were the exceptional talents Sengoku mentioned. Title cards introduced the two hunters. Masayoshi Yakumo, a 27-year-old muscular tank hunter wearing heavy shoulder pauldrons, and Jin Iazaki, a quiet guy with bandaged arms. Yakumo placed his hand over his chest, boasting that he was the main tank, telling the damage dealers to just trust his defense and focus on attacking. A title card highlighted him as Iron Wall Yakumo, but a dark flashback depicted Yakumo sociopathically choking a female hunter by her collar with a sadistic grin. Narration text exposed his true nature, revealing that Yakumo was widely notorious in the hunter world as a rotten power harassment boss, a hopeless sociopath, and a junior killer who murdered rookie teammates inside gates. Tenma looked at Yakumo with dark, dead eyes, thoroughly disgusted. The second recruit, Jin Iazaki, scratched his nose awkwardly, introducing himself as a user of electric magic. A title card highlighted him as the electric psychopath Jin Iazaki, while a terrifying flashback depicted Iazaki standing over a pool of electrocuted corpses, laughing maniacally as lightning surged from his palms, with narration revealing he later became a mass-killing villain. Tenma noted in his head that Sengoku really was a cold meritocrat who did not care about morals as long as a hunter got results. Suddenly, a third voice spoke from behind Tenma, introducing herself as a dagger main and saying, "Nice to meet you." Tenma turned around, seeing a short, pink-haired girl in a school uniform and hoodie holding dual curved daggers. The pink-haired girl glared at Tenma, coldly asking what he was looking at before turning away dismissively, scoffing that they should just get the raid over with and go home without wasting time on introductions. Tenma stared at her pink hair and piercing red eyes, his memory search level 10 skill instantly identifying her identity. Tenma spoke her name out loud, Akin Hashimori. The pink-haired girl gasped in total shock, turning back to ask how he knew her name. Tenma offered a soft, genuine smile, relieved in his head that Sengoku had included at least one decent human being in the squad. An epic title card panel unveiled Akin Hashimori in her future prime, wielding dual curved daggers in a dark hooded cloak alongside SSS rankers Kakeru Amamiya and Yuki Shurigane, officially introducing her as one of the last 11, an SSS-class hunter famously known as the Phantom Thief of the Visionary World, Akin Hashimori. Narration text described how in the apocalyptic future, survivors carried immense trauma, lost families, and broken promises, with many going completely insane from the horror, while a select few abnormal survivors were labeled as oddballs. Akin Hashimori was the absolute king of those oddballs, a rogue survivor who refused to trade, work, or negotiate, surviving purely by stealing indiscriminately from monsters, the demon race, and helpless human refugees alike. A flashback depicted Akin snatching stolen loot from crying refugees before leaping into the shadows. Back in the present forest clearing, Tenma Tsukishiro stared at her pink hair, thinking in black thought bubbles that he never expected to run into this infamous thief so early in his regression. Akin glared back at him with her red eyes, asking if there was something on her face before demanding to know who he was. Tenma offered a smooth, casual introduction, stating he was Tenma Tsukishiro, a D-class hunter who used swords and spears. Masayoshi Yakumo laughed cheerfully, stepping forward with Jin Ayazaki to announce it was time to head inside, as a massive golden portal opened on top of a grassy hill. The four-man party marched up the hill toward the portal, and Blue System windows confirmed their entry into the special dungeon, verifying that all members met the D-class or lower restriction before a blinding flash of golden light engulfed them. Stepping through the portal, Tenma shielded his eyes from a blazing desert sun, taking in endless golden sand dunes and ancient pyramids stretching under a clear blue sky. Akin shielded her eyes, complaining that it was way too hot, while Jin Ayazaki whined that he was going to pass out from the heat. Yakumo tapped his blue inventory screen, announcing he brought specialized cooling gear, pulling out a glowing blue cooler box marked Magic Ice and Cool Packs. Tenma watched Yakumo distribute the cooling packs, realizing in black bubbles that Yakumo must have received insider information on the desert terrain directly from Sengoku beforehand. Yakumo applied cool packs to his arms, confirming his role as party leader, while Akin placed a pack on her forehead with a happy sigh, feeling alive again. Yakumo ordered everyone to keep their guard up as they began marching across the scorching sand dunes. Walking through the desert, Tenma suddenly stopped, telling the group to hold up. System alerts flashed as perception level 10 activated, allowing Tenma's hyperware senses to detect incoming danger, warning the squad that monsters were lurking directly ahead. Yakumo shaded his eyes, looking out over the empty dunes and claiming he saw nothing, scoffing with a confident smirk that it did not matter if monsters showed up anyway because as the party leader, he would block every attack. The sand dunes exploded behind him as four massive green desert giant scorpions with glowing red eyes erupted from the sand, surrounding the party with snapping pincers. Yakumo looked at the giant beasts, admitting Tenma had good eyes, before stepping to the front with his shield and axe, shouting for everyone to get behind him. Surging with green aura, Yakumo beat his heavy shield with his axe, activating provocation level 5 to unleash a massive taunt aura that drew the scorpions' aggression. The scorpions screeched in rage, charging straight toward Yakumo's barrier shield. Yakumo held his ground as all four giant scorpions slammed their heavy claws against his green taunt shield, creating a massive sandstorm. Standing safely behind the shield, Jin Ayazaki channeled blue electric magic into his hands, warning the group that lightning magic was incoming, while Akin readied her twin daggers. Jin slammed his palms onto the sand, shooting a thick line of blue lightning across the desert floor that electrocuted the scorpions and blew their carapace defenses apart. Akin Hashimori leaped into the air at blinding speed, her red eyes locked on the stunned monsters as she executed a high-speed flurry of dagger slashes, cleanly dicing the giant scorpions into airborne pieces. The sliced scorpion corpses crashed onto the sand, and Yakumo lowered his shield, complimenting her clean kills. Akin sheathed her daggers with a cocky smile, boasting that it was nothing. Tenma stood watching them with crossed arms, thinking in black thought bubbles that this was actually a surprisingly stacked party. Looking at his empty hands, our boy noted in his head that there was literally zero work left for him to do. Yakumo turned around, calling out to Tenma and asking if he could at least pretend to be useful, and Tenma flinched, offering a polite confirmation. Suddenly violent earthquake tremors shook the desert floor as the sand beneath their feet began swirling into a giant whirlpool. Akin panicked, looking down at the sinking sand, as a giant, terrifying purple sandworm mouth erupted from the earth right beneath her boots. The sandworm swallowed Akin whole, pulling her straight down into the sand pit. The monster revealed its true form, a colossal, multi-limbed antlion demon king that emerged from the crater, holding Akin trapped inside its giant claw. Jin Ayazaki panicked, asking what they should do, while Yakumo frantically beat his shield, trying to draw the monster's attention. A system alert popped up, confirming that Yakumo's level 5 provocation failed due to a massive level difference between him and the antlion boss. Tenma dropped into a low combat crouch on the sand, a sly, predatory smirk spreading across his face. A flashback memory spun in Tenma's mind, recalling a starry night outside a refugee tent camp in his past life, where past Tenma gently woke up young Kyoya, telling him to quietly follow him into the ruins without making a sound. Past Tenma led the young boy to a destroyed building, digging a hole in the dirt with a shovel. Past Tenma stopped digging, revealing a metal bucket buried in the dirt packed with colorful candies, juice bottles, and snack packs. Young Kyoya gasped in shock, asking where he got candy and juice, and past Tenma smiled, explaining he worked tirelessly to gather them as a secret birthday present for Kyoya. Young Kyoya cried happy tears, thanking his uncle, and past Tenma patted his head, telling him to eat quietly so nobody would steal it. But right at that heartwarming moment, squelch. Akin Hashimori in her hooded thief attire dropped from the sky, knocking young Kyoya out cold on the dirt. Past Tenma gasped in shock, screaming her name, but Akin delivered a brutal kick straight into past Tenma's face, sending him crashing onto the rubble bleeding. Akin calmly walked over to the hole, stealing the entire birthday bucket of candies and juice before popping open a cold red soda can and chugging it right in front of them, leaving behind empty wrappers as she disappeared into the night. Past Tenma held young Kyoya in his arms as they both wept over their stolen birthday snacks, screaming in utter frustration. Back in the present desert, Tenma looked at Akin currently trapped in the antlion boss's claw as she screamed for help at the top of her lungs. Our boy stood on the sand dune with a cold, smug glare, thinking in black thought bubbles that this was pure karma and served her right. As the antlion demon king roared, holding Akin high while Yakumo and Jin trembled below, Tenma called out to Yakumo, yelling for him to hold up his shield. Tenma sprinted across the sand dunes, using Yakumo's heavy shield as a launching pad to jump high into the sky toward the boss. System alerts flashed as the spear of retrieval warped into his grip, glowing with intense blue lightning. Perception level 10 identified the giant centipede monster's head as its primary weak point, and Tenma reared his arm back midair. System alerts chimed, activating throwing level 11, and Tenma threw the spear of retrieval with catastrophic physical force. A giant pillar of blue lightning and kinetic energy shot through the sky, piercing straight through the antlion monster's head, blowing its brain apart in a massive explosion of sand and green blood. The giant antlion body collapsed onto the dunes, and Tenma landed smoothly on his feet while Akin fell from the sky, face-splinting into the sand. Tenma dragged Akin out of the pit by her collar as she coughed up dirt. Yakumo and Jin ran over in utter disbelief, shouting in shock that Tenma was hiding this kind of god-tier combat power. Tenma offered a casual response, but deep rumbling tremors suddenly shook the desert floor again. The sand dunes beneath their feet collapsed into a giant, swirling antlion sinkhole, pulling the entire party down into the abyss. Yakumo screamed in terror for everyone to get out, while Akin got sucked deeper into the sand vortex, screaming in pure rage over why bad luck only happened to her. Tenma looked down at her with a cocky grin, thinking in black thought bubbles that this was payback from the future timeline. Overhead, two mysterious men dressed in black suits stood on a cliffside watching the sinkhole collapse. One suit noted that he heard another guild was clearing this gate, and the second suit replied that their guildmaster ordered them to clean things up quietly, suggesting they wait for the party to clear the monsters before stealing the source of demonic energy when nobody was looking. But a hand suddenly reached out from the shadows behind them. An arrogant voice with sharp shark teeth snapped that their guildmaster's order to deal with them quietly meant they could murder anyone who got on their nerves even a little bit. A title card introduced the shark-toothed villain as Riku Himuro from the villain guild Kokayui, crouching on the cliff with a manic, bloodthirsty grin as he asked if they were really stupid enough to let a perfect killing opportunity slip away.